Mr. Brown here.
That's right.
He's been gone.
You leave for a couple of weeks and look what happens. Good morning, Carla. Good morning, everybody. This is the November 6, 2019 morning session of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Yes. Udaly?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Fish?
Here.
Hardesty?
Here.
Wheeler?
Here. And now we'll hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on, and when your time is done, a red light goes on. If you're in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you very much. First up, Carla, is communications.
Item 1009, request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding war crimes of city contracted G4S security, private military contractors, mercenaries.
Three minutes. Name for the record, please.
And please don't let your G4S security mercenaries kind of rush me before I can get my camera
Please start the
equipment
clock.
and all that stuff, okay? So, I wanted to start off actually by talking about G4S and a big article that just came out in the USA Today about them hiring unhinged people, violent cops that smash people's faces into walls and then attempt to rape women and say, "I'm the security. We're in control here. Ha ha ha." And I see that same pervasive attitude here with the security here. And they violate people's ADA rights. They violated Joe Walsh's rights, my rights, all kinds of people's rights. And also, going on to something else, which is kind of more important, and it kind of involves you, Chloe Udaly. Please don't leave. It's about your PBOT agency targeting a homeless family that was awarded domestic violence funds recently by the state because you guys, the city of Portland, are the perpetrators against a homeless family, Jay Vincent and his family. They were living in a school bus in St. John's, and you guys repeatedly targeted them for years and years and years until the state recently awarded them domestic violence funds to leave the state. That's you, and that's you, Chloe Udaly. Remember when there's that photo of you sitting next to that banner that says "No war but the class war"? No war but class war, when you used to act like you were a little radical. Well, now you are the class war against the homeless. You've joined the oligarchy, and what did you do for Jay and his family? Nothing. You perpetrated war crimes just like G4S. And I'm glad you didn't vote for them, but you did praise them around here when they deserve no praise. All you other people are disgusting. And hey, Ted Wheeler, Sunderland money? Returning that? What about Terry Bean money? What about Scott Ballow? What about Morel Inc.? owned by a child pornographer that you hang out with, that every one of you, I'm pretty sure, gets your campaign stuff printed by. You're free to interrupt if you don't get your campaign stuff printed at Morel Inc., owned by Scott Ballo, busted for child porn. I know there's pictures of you hanging out with Scott Ballo. I've posted them on my Twitter, Multnomah County Cop Watch. And you're all smiling with the guy who was busted for child porn, and you're the police commissioner too? Yeah, that's real accountability. You guys gonna
you.
return Beans money? Nick Fish, Joanne
Thank you.
Hardesty?
Your 3 minutes
and
are up. Thank you.
Are you gonna return the Bean money?
You're going to sit down or I'm going to rule you out of order. You're going to sit down or I'm going to rule you out of order. Next individual. I'm sorry, you're out of order. You're going to have to leave.
I just had to say my piece and leave. I'm getting ADA accommodations. so I
You're
can come
you're
back
winning
anytime
friends
I
left
want.
and right, my friend. Have a good day.
Next week and say hi to you. When I get my ADA accommodations, so I can come back anytime I want.
Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 1010, request of Lightning Super Connectome to address council regarding human connectome.
Good morning.
At least that can only be once every 3 months.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Connectome. To the neuroscientist, is my connectome my consciousness? The human connectome is a comprehensive map of the neural connections in the brain and may be thought of as its wiring diagram. We live in a universe of space, time, mass, energy, and consciousness arising out of complex systems. To understand the origins of consciousness, we must create a comprehensive map of neural connections in the brain. We must create the human connectome. In the words of Elon Musk, we must fight for the light of consciousness. Video, please.
It's been a century-long endeavor to make better maps of the human cerebral cortex.
Cajal said, nerve cells are connected in a wiring diagram, and now it's up to our generation and the generations following to get those wiring diagrams, to really know what they are.
Think of the folds of the human cerebral cortex as analogous to the crumpling of the Earth's surface into mountains and valleys and other geographic features.
We start off, all of us, as a single-celled organism, and then we all go through this miracle of development where we create the most complex 3 pounds in the universe.
There are also environmental factors that are going to shape how the brain wires up, how those convolutions are created over time.
If you want to understand and be able to ask deeper questions about behaviors and where they come from and why am I different from you and why are we similar. So it's a very exciting time in developmental neuroscience.
Okay. All right, that was interesting. Thank you. Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 1011, request of Shedrick J. Wilkins to address council regarding I Hate Oregon.
Cedric, tell us it's not true.
I'm surprising. Number one is I hate Oregon because we don't have a baseball team. I support the Diamond Stadium project. And I remember in the early 70s, what was that guy who was on Bonanza? He's the Portland Beavers, or I don't know what they call it. and he didn't make it. And of course, the Blazers blew everybody away in '77, so he just abandoned. I like baseball. I hate football. I think football is rough. High school is really, it's a bad sport because it's played in the rain, in bad weather, high school injuries. I like baseball better. Baseball, you can play baseball with a plastic baseball, have a lot of fun in the spring and summertime. I got the World Series right. I was for the Nationals or the Houston Astros. So I think it's a positive thing to build a baseball stadium and have a baseball team. And another thing, I hate Oregon because we should have had a mayor like Mayor Wheeler in the 1990s. You're a great mayor. I support your reelection. At Oaks Park, I talk to your opponents. I do not expect a runoff. So I will help you early on. And when you get in office, I enjoyed helping you 4 years ago and seeing how your process were going along. And I support your reelection. And get it back. I hate Oregon for not having a baseball team. We need baseball, and I am anti-football.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next individual, please.
Item 1012, request of Anna Weichel to address council regarding proposed changes to Code Section 3.96 relating to questions of participation structure, equality of representation.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Anna Weichel. Dear City Council, I'm living in Portland for 2 years now. The past 6 months, I engaged in the Code Change 3.96 discourse through Southeast Uplift. And the disconcerting character of this discourse has startled me. Today, I'm speaking from my personal point of view as a recent immigrant with East German roots and as a resident without the right to vote in this country. Based on my own microhistory of being punished for defending democratic principles in East Germany and adjusting twice to completely different cultural and social settings, for me, civic engagement is a backbone of a just, equitable, and democratic community. The proposed code change, however, casts doubt on its effectiveness for any bottom-up structure, namely that of a defined right of say. It rather seems to dismantle accountable in the name of plurality and does not implement updated ones. Those 2 main points. First, the lack of acknowledgement of standards to which any participating individual, group, and city bureau is accountable to. The proposed paragraphs imply merely a self-referential engagement of the city of Portland with its community and civic affairs. Code, however, needs to define democratic standards for participatory interactions, first and foremost based on ethical principles and independent of an economic approval system, such as the proposed budgeting process. To overcome historically inherited problems of inequality and self-reflecting understanding of social interactions is needed, one that avoids othering and tokenism and rather centers on human dignity, a concept that allows for mutual rights and mutual obligations and furthers adjustment of our socially constructed categories and associations. Second, the omitted proposition of a reliable and transparent organizational structure of representation that serves people who live, play, worship, and work in Portland. Codes need to define social and cultural responsibilities of a community by outlining a tangible organizational structure which will ensure a democratic decision-making process and counteract unreasonable interference of any interest group in city developments. The obscure code proposal does not guarantee a problem-solving for underrepresented groups, as the organizational structure of civic engagement becomes an even more confusing. The logic behind underrepresentation rests upon insufficient means of participation. If skills and time to intervene in an existing power system are crucial, a reliable system of participatory organization is imperative. The proposed code, without any structural stronghold to standard rules and accountability, invites an uncontrolled influx of interest groups and will disproportionately assist persons who have experience with and speak the language of social and political structures.
Thank you for your testimony. Commissioner Udaly.
I'd just like to comment, we're not going to have an exchange here, you're a little out of date on your information. Number one, the proposed code change maintained all of the rights and standards of neighborhood associations, and that's been the case for several months. Two, we're not actually.
My problem.
Two, we're not actually passing code change, and there'll be an event, a special council session on November 14th at 5:30 at SEI, where you can hear about what we are doing.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Great. It's not, we're not going to have an exchange.
Is the document out yet that was supposed to be
This
submitted
isn't an
yesterday?
exchange. You can talk to my office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
Item 1013, request of Thomas Karwaki to address council regarding Vision Zero, reading of the names and a moment of silence for those killed by vehicles on the streets of Portland in 2019.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tom Karwaki, and I'm a member of the Portland Bureau of Transportation Budget and Bureau Advisory Committee. Vision Zero is a very important subject, and we start each meeting with concentrating on those people who have died on the streets of Portland. You've received the names of everyone as well as where the accidents or the crashes were, and you've also received a map which has the locations and separated by whether they're a pedestrian, bicyclist, or a motorcyclist. Lowell Gibson, pedestrian.
Rochelle D. Cox, pedestrian.
Not available, motor vehicle.
James A. McCree, pedestrian.
Lori Pierce, pedestrian.
Not available, bicycle.
Heaven Matthews, motor vehicle.
Ortrud V. Vathauer, pedestrian.
Sean Scott, pedestrian.
Name not available, pedestrian.
Name not available, pedestrian.
Name not available, motor vehicle.
Name not available, motor vehicle.
Sandra Bosch, pedestrian.
Name not available, motor vehicle.
Deontay Martin Eugene Farlow, motor vehicle.
Lori Woodard, pedestrian.
Ray W. Yar, motor vehicle.
Larry Dill, pedestrian.
Elijah Coe, motorcycle.
Name not available, motorcycle.
Anna Moreno Hernandez, motor vehicle.
Kaylee Miranda Hernandez, motor vehicle.
Mark Herr, motor vehicle.
Tanya Smith, motor vehicle.
Loanna Badams, pedestrian.
Magdiel Chacon Sanchez, motor vehicle.
Lance T. Hart, bicycle.
Alfonso Martinez Angarthi, motor vehicle.
Charlene Hoff, motor vehicle.
Robin McCready, motor vehicle.
Jamie St. Louis, motor vehicle.
Donald Cole, motorcycle.
Elena Davkina, motor vehicle.
Carl Moeller, motorcycle.
Tony Mack, motor vehicle.
John Shenfield, motorcycle.
Christian Lennon, pedestrian.
Nazarli Senchuk, motor vehicle.
Edward Woods, motorcycle.
Eric Tomlinson, pedestrian.
Name not available, a motorcycle. Senator?
Thank you.
Name for the record.
Good, yes. Lou Frederick, State Senator, District 22, North and Northeast Portland. I wanted to have a chance to at least acknowledge one of my friends who was killed recently, Susan Bartlett, on her motorcycle, on her Vespa. She was one of those folks who tried to be as safe as possible. She was always in her helmet and in gear to try to deal with things, but ended up being hit by an SUV in the Hollywood district, and I wanted to acknowledge her as well as the 12 people that were listed were in my district, the 12 incidents that took place in my district. Safety is an issue that all of us need to understand and work with, and I appreciate you listening to us and taking the actions you can on this.
Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Tom Karwacki, thank you for leading the reading of the names. There are 3 members of this council that have lost loved ones to car accidents. And having lost my mother to a car accident, I can say that even though that event happened a very long time ago, there isn't a day that goes by when I'm not affected by the fallout of losing a loved one. We all agree on this side of the dais that one death under Vision Zero is too many. I want to acknowledge that PBOT, through their Vision Zero program, is doing yeoman's work to address safety. I'm very pleased that at some of these high crash corridors, they're putting barriers that make it harder for people to make the kind of reckless left turns that have caused such carnage with our pedestrians. I'm pleased that we've lowered speed limits. I'm pleased, by the way, sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who follows those speed limits, but it is important that we all slow down, observe those 25-mile-an-hour speed limits. They're making other improvements. I want to acknowledge that work. I believe personally we need to do some more enforcement of the laws, because I think sometimes enforcement is what gets the message across, and we need to do it in a way, obviously, that's non-discriminatory. But thank you for taking the time to recognize those who we've lost, and we have a lot of work to do, but I think we do have a plan. We have a model, and I think PBOT is showing us ways in which we can get ahead of this terrible crisis. And we will all continue to work with Chloe and her bureau to make progress.
And for the record, my name is Rob Martineau, and thank you for the time to express the importance of the Vision Zero initiative and that program.
Thank you for being here and keeping this issue front and center. Senator Fredericks, thank you for being here today.
Mayor, can I be recognized for a moment before the time's certain?
Commissioner Fish.
So I'm sorry that Commissioner Fritz isn't here, but since there was an election yesterday, I do think it's important that we acknowledge a couple things. We had a colleague, Commissioner Fritz, who took 2 ballot measures forward, one which proposed to put protections of the Bull Run into our charter, and the second one would allow for mutual aid agreements in our charter. So it would allow our men and women, first responders, for our utilities to train with other jurisdictions, respond to their crises, and also, in turn, have other folks help us during a crisis. They both passed with record votes. So congratulations to Commissioner Fritz, and I think on behalf of the council, we owe her a debt of gratitude for the work she did to pass.
Thank you.
I've been on the council a while, and I don't remember 2 measures that passed with 89% of the vote, so it's really extraordinary. And she has the secret formula. She goes out to neighborhood associations and summer free-for-all events and does her advocacy work. So Commissioner Fritz, congratulations. I also want to just acknowledge that the city voters chose to continue a levy for our teachers. As the proud father of a sophomore in Portland Public Schools, that makes a huge difference and means that we won't be laying off a lot more teachers. So thank you to Portland voters for digging deep on that. Congratulations to Metro on a very strong showing on the Metro bond measure. And for those of you who are interested, there's both a carve-out for Portland in the bond, and there's also an opportunity to apply for discretionary dollars. And so there's a lot of good news in that bond. Thank you, Portland voters, for stepping up on that as well. And finally, I just want to acknowledge that last night, Bank of America, which has a program called Neighborhood Builder, and every year selects 2 organizations in our community that they give money to help them do community work, selected the Mobile Play and Meal Program administered by Portland Parks and Rec for a $200,000 grant. What that will allow us to do is greatly expand a program which takes play and food to hungry kids and families in places in Portland that don't have built infrastructure. So think about apartment buildings that are not within a half mile of a playground or a park, or places in East Portland, North Portland, and elsewhere. We're extremely excited to get that grant. It will allow us to serve a lot more hungry families and kids, and we're grateful to be the recipient of that generous grant.
Commissioner Fritz.
Commissioner Fish, thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your park staff allowing me to be at the Summer Free-for-All meetings, events. We were very careful to use the Secretary of State approved information sheet on that, so that city staff were not involved in advocacy on these ballot measures. Similarly, going to neighborhood associations was all done on volunteer time. And I'm very, very grateful to the voters of Portland who once again have satisfied my trust that when given full and accurate information, the voters make really good choices. So thank you, voters, for voting yes on everything last night.
Very good. Thank you. And just a note related to the last public testimony we took on traffic deaths. I want to remind the council that next week we'll also be taking up a proclamation recognizing the victims of traffic deaths in Portland. Carla, have any items been pulled off of the consent agenda?
We've had no requests.
Call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. First time certain item number 1014.
Amend deconstruction of buildings law code to include houses and duplexes built in 1940 or earlier.
Here in the city of Portland, we value sustainability and protecting the environment. Expanding our current deconstruction of buildings law is keeping with Portland's goals and values that will help to bolster that effort. I'd like to read some excerpts from a city report that should sound somewhat familiar if you've been following the demolition debate over the last 5 years or so. The task force has been directed to study new approaches to the issues of housing density and demolition in response to recent events involving the controversial demolition of housing to make way for new residential development. The Oregon economy has recovered from the recession. New apartment and single-family home construction has begun to approach record-breaking levels. The task force has considered options for saving viable housing in historic buildings, ensuring public safety, recycling useful architectural fixtures, protecting the environment, and preserving neighborhood character. These excerpts came from the Housing Task Force report on demolition and density, written more than 30 years ago. I bring this up because the concept and context of what we're discussing today isn't new. We recognize that some houses will be removed as we accommodate more development and density in the city. We also recognize that this cycle has real impacts to our neighborhoods, our landfills, our environment, and to our health. What's relatively new is the significant steps we're taking to address these issues, projects such as the residential infill project and Better Housing by Design. And 3 years ago, Portland began disrupting the business-as-usual approach to mechanically demolishing houses by requiring deconstruction. This means that houses are now hand disassembled, materials are salvaged for reuse, and in turn, these materials can be used in everything from sleeping pods for the houseless to handcrafted furniture and finishes that are showcased in our restaurants and coffee houses and elsewhere. Again, it's all about sustainability. Deconstruction also nourishes our continuing initiative to build a circular economy where we move away from a linear model of using something once and then throwing it out and having it go to the landfill, instead finding ways to creatively reuse materials. The process also reduces the carbon footprint created by conventional demolition and helps abate potential harmful public health impacts such as asbestos and lead dust. This is not just made in Portland, it's made from Portland. Thank you for being here today, and we look forward to our presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Elisa Kane. I'm the Climate Action Manager with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. In 2016, Portland became the first city in North America to require deconstruction for its oldest and most historic houses when proposed for removal. Portland's ordinance ensures valuable materials are salvaged for reuse instead of being burned or landfilled. And during those hearings, we were commended for leading the way, and council was thanks for its leadership on this issue. As you're aware, Portland continues to be looked at as an innovator and incubator for sustainability policies and programs. This deconstruction ordinance is no exception. Other cities were paying close attention when we were doing this work, and now cities such as Vancouver, BC, Palo Alto, Minneapolis, Denver, and San Antonio have either modeled their ordinances on our approach or have installed grant programs and other incentives similar to what we've used in the past. How we manage materials that come from older homes matters. Green building starts with how we remove a house and what becomes of those materials. We also understand that the life cycle impacts are becoming increasingly important as we look for additional ways to reduce carbon emissions and build a resilient city. We used a very long runway to phase in this program. We started out with incentives in 2015. These were grants that were provided to people who wanted to demolish their homes and instead use deconstruction as an alternative. And then after seeing what the industry could handle, we enacted the ordinance in 2016. And at that time, some people wanted us to go further. And we promised at that time that we'd be back before the end of 2019 to reconsider advancing the amendment to cover more homes and expand this ordinance. So that's why we're here today, and Sean will share more details of the amendment we're proposing.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. Thank you for having us. I'm Sean Wood. I'm the Construction Waste Specialist for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And first, I'd like to go over the purpose statement from the Deconstruction Code language in Title 17. The Deconstruction Ordinance seeks to maximize the salvage of valuable building materials for reuse, reduce carbon emissions associated with demolition, reduce the amount of demolition waste disposed of in landfills, and minimize the adverse impacts associated with building removal. That's important because it's the why of this ordinance, and it's also the what in terms of measuring success. The current ordinance requires deconstruction for any house or duplex that was built in 1916 or earlier, or if it's a designated historic resource, regardless of age. Houses built in 1916 or earlier represent approximately 1/3 of annual house demolitions. And in our 26 ordinance, as Elisa mentioned, we established a goal to raise that year built to houses built before 1941 by this year, by 2019. The proposed amendment would expand the ordinance to include houses and duplexes built in 1940 or earlier. These houses are still rich in old-growth lumber found in the framing. The proposed effective date would be January 20th, 2020. We had originally proposed December 31st of 2019 as an effective date. However, BDS asked us if we could avoid that date because there might be a rush on permits around the holiday season when their staffing levels are low. Raising the year-built threshold to 1940 means we would capture approximately 2/3 of annual demolition permits. So while this doubles our capture rate, demolition permits have been declining since 2016. These are the number of annual demolition permit applications since 2016. The orange represents the current ordinance, and the green represents houses built in between 1940 and 1917. As you can see, capturing houses built in or before 1940 puts us back to the level of work when the current ordinance began 3 years ago. Now I'd like to talk about the benefits and outcomes of the ordinance to date. Since the ordinance went into effect in 2016, we've had over 200 house deconstructions, again, 1/3 of house demolitions. And from those projects, over 2.4 million pounds of material was salvaged for reuse, material that would have otherwise been burned or landfilled. All that salvage material, the avoided impacts of disposal and production translate to carbon benefits, which we'll hear more about during the panel testimony. While not the primary driver of this policy, the hazardous material benefits of deconstruction are an important one. Deconstruction has always been looked at as a best practice for reducing impacts of hazardous material when compared to mechanical demolition. New BDS requirements that went into effect last year have helped level the playing field by requiring mechanical demolition projects to first hand remove all exterior paint and material and then apply water to the structure before and during demolition and loading. However, deconstruction goes further still. All of the certified deconstruction contractors have been trained and certified in lead-based paint and asbestos hazards. This is a condition to maintain their deconstruction certification. This is not the case with mechanical demolition contractors. Familiarity with the potentially asbestos-containing material and the surgical nature of deconstruction mean it is not uncommon that contractors come across unabated asbestos during deconstruction. Work stops, the material is safely removed by an abatement contractor, and then work resumes on the house. This material is likely to go unnoticed and unabated during mechanical demolition. The deconstruction ordinance helps create economic opportunity, not only in deconstruction, but also in the sale, fabrication, and installation of the salvage material. From the beginning, this program has focused on providing opportunities for women, people of color, and other disadvantaged groups in the field of deconstruction. It continues today with current training and newly certified contractors. Preserving and maintaining our existing structures should always be the first approach, but if a house must come down, deconstruction allows us to preserve the irreplaceable materials and craftsmanship and to preserve the built history and the human experience that is tied to it. Portland is a timber town, and our built history reflects that. Our ancient old-growth forests are now standing in our oldest houses. We've seen a lot of changes over the past 3 years. We currently have 12 companies certified to do deconstruction work and 3 additional ones in training. We've had 2 new salvage retail operations open, and the existing and new retailers are adding value to the salvage material, turning it into furniture, siding, and wall cladding. And Oregon State just recently completed successful testing of cross-laminated timber, mass timber panels constructed from deconstructed houses, from the lumber from deconstructed houses in Portland. This industry has the added support of state and regional government looking to further the benefit of material reuse. This ranges from equipment purchase assistance to sponsoring trainings with a focus on women and people of color. Because of the increased competition and innovation, the cost to deconstruct has come down over the past 3 years, and during that same time period, the cost to mechanically demolish has gone up, primarily because of shrinking markets for wood and as industrial fuel and new site and dust control requirements implemented by the Bureau of Development Services, commonly known as SB 871 requirements. 3 years ago, when the current ordinance passed, deconstruction cost approximately $8,000 more than mechanical demolition. Today, the cost difference is anywhere from $0 to $3,000 more for deconstruction. And we know that for every single house deconstruction, an average of 12 new units, single dwelling or multi-dwelling, are constructed as part of the replacement development. That means assuming a $3,000 premium for deconstruction, the added cost is $250 per unit. And I'd like to note that the Home Builders Association has suggested adding an exemption from the deconstruction requirements for houses that are removed for the purpose of constructing affordable housing. Reducing the cost of affordable housing are important, and so too are the benefits of deconstruction. And with that lens, BPS and the Housing Bureau explored the concept and implications of such an exemption. After careful research, discussion, and consideration, BPS and the Housing Bureau did not support an exemption, given the limited financial benefit for these projects, the range of existing exemptions and those on the horizon, the limited number of projects that could take advantage of a deconstruction exemption, and the challenges related to implementation and enforcement. So what about the carrying costs associated with deconstruction? Deconstruction takes longer than mechanical demolition. 5 to 10 days for deconstruction, a couple of days for mechanical demolition. When we look at permit data timelines for both types of projects, we find that deconstruction projects get their demo permits quicker and break ground on the new replacement projects sooner than mechanical demolition projects. In both cases, the gap between when the demolition permit is issued and when the new project begins is 3.4 months. This suggests that not only does the longer deconstruction duration not impact carrying costs, there is also plenty of time to get the job done. So why raise the year-built threshold now? The deconstruction contractors and salvage retailers are ready for more projects and material. The industry has matured and expanded, and these companies are actively investing in the future with new equipment, new space, and new staff and crew. They're ready for this expansion and are anticipating it. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen a decline in demolition permits since 2016. Expanding now means there is little risk to overwhelming the industry or the market, which is always an important consideration. The industry has a firm footing and has adapted in ways we couldn't have imagined. I have no reason to believe that that won't be the case going forward as the landscape changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does that complete your testimony?
It
All right,
does.
good. We have an invited panel. Thank you for the testimony. Shane Endicott from the Northwest Deconstruction Specialist, Jackie Kerouac-Frem from the Rebuilding Center, Emily Christensen from Goodwood Deconstruction and Salvage, and Jordan Palmieri from the Oregon DEQ. Come on up and welcome, and thank you for being here to help support this ordinance. If you want to just drag one more chair up, go ahead. Thanks. Thank you very much. And the microphone slide around. Welcome, and if you could just state your name for the record, we'd appreciate it. I don't know who'd like to go first.
I'll start.
All right, thank you.
Great. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioners. My name is Jordan Palmieri, and I work in the Materials Management Program at the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. I'm here today to talk about some of the environmental benefits of this city's deconstruction policy, with a particular focus on the carbon impacts. For the last 20 years, DEQ has supported deconstruction and building material reuse projects around the state. Over that time, we provided grants to deconstruction businesses to support truck purchases. We've supported material racking and display systems for retail outlets, and even supported a grant to help train the initial workforce for the policy being discussed here today. When we look at reducing the carbon impacts of building materials, it's really important to first understand where those impacts occur. For most building materials, the largest impacts happen during the production of those materials, not during the use or disposal. The carbon impacts of material production are often referred to as embodied carbon. While there are many ways to address the production-related impacts, material salvage and reuse offers a really powerful pathway to reduce impacts. Material reuse interrupts the produce, consume, dispose cycle of our economy and reduces our demand for new materials. To better understand the potential benefits of reduced material demand, we conducted a detailed analysis of the carbon and energy impacts of the first 36 homes that went through your program after passed in 2016. The goals of the research were to understand the net impacts of your policy and provide that information to the city and other jurisdictions in Oregon considering a similar policy. We found that compared to mechanical demolition, the average home being deconstructed in Portland has a carbon benefit twice as large as a home being mechanically demolished. So it turns out that your policy does, in fact, have significant carbon benefits. As the program grows, it will be important to provide continued support for salvaged material market development, since the carbon benefits of projects are only realized when the material displaces the purchase and production of a new material. Finally, I do think it's important to provide a sense of scale for the carbon benefits gained through policies that address our consumption of materials. We're currently in an era of climate change where the scale and timing of our policy responses is really critically important. City Council recently passed a single-use plastics reduction policy, which aims to reduce the demand for new plastic items. Similarly, the deconstruction policy aims to reduce the demand for new building materials. To compare these policies, one Portland resident would have to decline single-use plastic utensils about 162,000 times to equal the carbon benefit of one deconstructed home. So just, it's a lot. So just as we can reduce the demand for single-use plastic utensils, the city is leading the way to reduce the demand for single-use building materials. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you. And thanks for also reminding us that this isn't just about diverting landfill. This is also about reducing the production cycle. So thanks for underscoring that point. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and distinguished commissioners. Good morning.
It's good to see you again. Welcome back.
Thanks. My name is Shane Endicott. I'm with Northwest Deconstruction Specialists. Came straight here from a job site. We also, not only do we deconstruct houses in any size building, really from a garage to multi-story apartment buildings, but we also have a retail outlet that's not advertised or marketed because it's a temporary space. We're there month to month. So it's all word of mouth and people just curious wandering in. But we're still able to fill a 50,000 square foot space packed and keep the materials moving out. We have been in business since the ordinance took effect. And we have been doing primarily whole houses. And we've noticed a change over the last 3 years that I think is really important to note, that the buildings that we started out were just exclusively on the ordinance. But as we've worked with clients who've come back in word of mouth, they've had us deconstructing more and more homes and buildings that are not required to be deconstructed. We've been also, as we've been deconstructing, I think every house we've deconstructed, which we've done over 20 each year, we have found asbestos in the process, sometimes multiple times, with the exception of four structures that we did not find asbestos in. So there's a lot that you uncover when we're peeling the house back. In response to Sean's BES's presentation, we have been very successful in achieving, I think, some of the goals of the deconstruction ordinance. 90% of our employees are people of color and women, and 100% are in leadership and management roles in our organization. We have been able to donate lots of materials to different projects throughout the city and beyond. We also donate to the Rebuilding Center, Habitat, Restore, and people actually in the neighborhood. People will see us working and come by. Some of them are living outside of a home and have asked us for materials, and we frequently donate things right on the spot. And we have a lot of ownership throughout our organization with the employees. They want to move this beyond just taking houses down, but facilitate conversations in the community about how we can advance reducing our carbon footprint through doing performance art, through our projects and other things to engage community. So we need a space first to be able to do all that. I also want to just make sure that I mention well, I think I covered everything. We're an Oregon benefit company, and we're in strong support of it increasing the year to 1940 and earlier. We see opportunities that we could be growing, tripling what we're currently doing, and also we're serving by helping other deconstruction companies realize the value of their materials, making it more economically viable for them as well. And we just see there's a lot of opportunity here. So the ordinance has ripple effects beyond just the environmental and the job component. It's also doing all these other positive benefits.
Very good.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane. I am very impressed with the fact that you can be here at the City Council and say that 90% of your workforce are people of color, and the leadership is 100% people of color. I sit here often and hear people just can't find people of color no matter how hard they try for work. And so that doesn't happen by accident, that your workforce is that reflective of the community? How did you do that?
Well, it's organically, but through relationships.
Say that again?
Through relationships.
So you knew people.
Well, no, actually, people were attracted to what we were offering. We really promoted that we wanted people to be able to come in and not just be labor and take buildings down, but if they were interested in advancing. And by no surprise, nearly everyone wanted to advance. So what we did is we lay out a program where we pay for training and we pay for them to have that opportunity, and then they take over those roles within the company. And we're much more successful because of it. And we also have people who, then they want other people to work there that they have relationships with, and that's how it grows. They start telling everyone, you should come and work here. We have the problem of a lot of people want to work there, but we don't have enough openings. So that's a good problem because we could fix that problem.
We could certainly fix that problem. Would you be kind enough to leave your contact info at my office? Because I want to talk to you, because it's fascinating to me that it's so hard for some individuals to actually be intentional about ensuring that we have a diverse workforce and that we're reflective of the community. And quite frankly, I love old wood, so anybody that's like taking old housing apart is somebody that I really like, right?
All right.
But I wanna learn more. I wanna learn more about your training, your investment in people, and then how that leads into leadership, because you could help a lot of folks actually get over that hurdle of not knowing anybody.
We're an open source. We have no
Thank you.
secrets. Thank you.
Appreciate
Commissioner
you.
Fritz.
Sean, would you mind sharing what you shared with my staff about the role of the city's prime contractor development program in your training?
I'm sorry?
The prime contractor development program?
The prime contractor development program, as far as our work,
Yeah, about how you did. I understand that they paid for some of the training with the cost of the contractors.
not with us.
Okay. I must
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But you could.
We could. We most definitely could. I apologize. We did hire employees from the first deconstruction training, and as far as I know, we're the only company that's still retaining someone from that program. But many of them have gone on the move through our organization. Went on to do other construction work, so stay in the field. But that's
Right.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for being
Good
here.
morning. Thank you for having me. Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, my name is Emily Christensen. I'm the co-owner of Goodwood, Deconstruction, Salvage, and Design. Just wanted to back up and talk about how we formed. David, my partner, and I heard about the ordinance on the radio. We were in the process of deconstructing a big farmhouse out in Hillsborough, just on our own with a group of friends, because I had designed an ADU for our backyard, and we were trying to gather a large lot of matching wood with which to build it. Going to Home Depot was out of the question for me, but we had a hard time finding enough, but basically we had a hard time spending so much time searching around the various salvage yards and Craigslist trying to find a matching lot of wood that would apply to our design. When we heard about the ordinance, we just turned around and asked everyone we were working with, hey, do you want to start a crew? And Goodwood was born. We never did build that ADU, but we have had a lot of fun building up Goodwood for the last 3 years. As you know, the ordinance has been such a success. There are so many wonderful things about it, any of which would justify expanding it to 1940. But the thing I keep thinking about is the quantity of reclaimed wood that now is in the marketplace due to the ordinance. Before the ordinance, you needed to hunt and peck all over town to find enough wood for your project. And the ordinance really changed that. It took what was a rare and hard to find material and made it available, consistent, and dependable. That's a huge change. But in order to fundamentally affect wood purchasing habits in the trades and to expand the use of reclaimed wood in place of new wood, we believe we have to speak the language of builders and designers. We have to make reclaimed wood easy to purchase, easy to use, and scalable. And to do that, we need more wood. We heartily support the expansion of the ordinance because we want to change the purchasing habits of folks within the building industry. Expansion reduces the amount of material going into the landfill, but perhaps more importantly, it provides the quantity of material needed to make reclaimed wood a viable alternative to new wood, a crucial step toward reducing deforestation. Our motto is deconstruct, don't cut. But we have to offer a viable alternative to new wood, and with the expansion, I believe we can. Goodwood is anticipating the expansion by opening up a wood store this month in the heart of the design district at the Burnside Bridgehead. We've had a salvage warehouse retail space in Northeast for 2 years, but this will be a different type of enterprise. This store will be modeled after a regular store. So we'll have a predictable inventory from which to shop. We'll have 7 consistent found profiles and 14 consistent remilled profiles. With the expansion, we'll be able to size up to fill larger orders, and when customers run out and need more of the same wood, they can get it. We want to meet builders and designers where they are. We want to bring reclaim to them by presenting it in the same way they're used to seeing new lumber presented. We want to make using reclaimed easy, and in order to reach critical mass, we need to have enough reclaimed wood to offer consistency and scalability. And to do that, we encourage council to expand the ordinance. I brought a couple of examples of our remilled profiles. This is what they call a square joint T&G. So it'd be for walls or floors or ceiling. Another example back there is of a V-groove. So this would be a typical profile you would buy in a new wood store, but made with 100% recycled wood. So in some of those new condominium builds that you're seeing on Martin Luther King these days, the entryway could be reclaimed wood instead of tiger wood from the Amazon. So we're really looking to position ourselves as a resource to start shifting the narrative toward a more, sustainable model of building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Thanks for sharing your story. I'm sorry you didn't actually end up building your ADU. It sounds.
Me too.
But thanks for sharing the process. That's
Thank
really
you.
informative. Helps us. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Jackie Kerouac-Fram, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rebuilding Center. And I'm here to talk a little bit more about the social impact of the ordinance. So as you may know, the Rebuilding Center is a nonprofit with a mission to build community resilience through reuse and repair of reclaimed building materials. And of the 1,800 tons of materials we diverted from landfills last year, a substantial percentage was reclaimed lumber. In the years past, our own deconstruction service had provided much of that lumber. But with the passage of the Portland Deconstruction Ordinance in 2016, a new and wonderful community of for-profit deconstruction firms is very competently serving the deconstruction needs of the Portland region. And as a result, this past July, we decided to halt our own deconstruction operations, but due in part to the partnership of some of these for-profit partners, we continue to sell tons of reclaimed lumber, and it continues to be one of our best-selling, most loved item categories. There are a whole lot of people who need lumber for various projects. And for those who do not need high-end old-growth lumber, and even for those who do, we have that also. But we exist to provide this affordable alternative for people who want to prioritize reuse or who cannot afford to purchase new material or to purchase reclaimed material at one of the more retail, boutique-type retail outlets. The people that we serve, more than 25,000 people per year, they want this material. And in addition to the lumber, at the Rebuilding Center, we also offer all manner of things that come out of a deconstructed house, right? So appliances, lighting, fixtures, all manner of things that people can use to repair and renovate their homes, to be able to stay in their homes for longer, especially if they're at risk of displacement. And these people, all of our customers, but in particular these more vulnerable populations, would greatly benefit from the increased amount of lumber and materials that we could stand to provide if this ordinance is passed. Moving the year to 1940 will provide a fantastic supply of these materials that our customers will put back into the circulation through countless projects to enhance their quality of life affordably and sustainably. We at the Rebuilding Center believe that the sustainability is best practice at the neighborhood level, and one of the best ways to do that is to maintain resources within a community. And this ordinance will help continue to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Colleagues, any questions of this panel? Very good. Thank you all for being in here. Thank you for your support of this important ordinance. Next up, Carla, we have public testimony. How many people do we have signed up?
We have 6 people signed up.
Very good.
The first 3, please come on up, are Shedrick J. Wilkins, John Sandy, and Barbara Kerr.
Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, I'm Shedrick Wilkins. I favor deconstruction. I think the best building material of modern time are bricks. You make a brick building, and I like to go in the East Bank Saloon or something where they have exposed plumbing or exposed wires, because actually a lot of times in modern construction, we want to put paneling and bury wires and plumbing, or pour, if you have pipes with lead pipes, you pour concrete over the top. Well, concrete cracks, okay? And you got this stuff stuck in there. And then electrical things in the future, there are ideas that maybe we'll just have solar panels on the roof and use 6 volts for LED lights. But the whole idea was you've got this 120 volts of electricity and you've got to shield it from the kids. So you bury it in the wall, okay? And you use asbestos paneling. And what it means is you have to tear the whole thing down. And there are skyscrapers and community colleges made with concrete that are eventually just going to crack up, where brick buildings will still be around. And they knew this too. When they had the bicentennial in colonial America, they found a lot of the brick buildings are still good. And they don't have floors. The bricks go down, and so you build wood for a floor. The plumbing is not encased in concrete. The roof can come off. You could put solar panels on the roof and readjust the roof. And bricks are very good, and they last. And concrete doesn't, it cracks, and you're burying stuff in the walls. My dad was an amateur electrician one time. Electrician spends half of his time getting into the wall. Whereas some of these taverns or buildings like East Bank, you can see the plumbing go over here on the bottom, and you can see the wires on the top. You don't have to fight the building. And bricks are very good.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and
Good morning.
Commissioners. My name is John Sandy. I'm a resident of Northeast Portland and member of UNR.
Thank you.
Let me put a little historical context on this present proposal. Back in May of 2014, while doing research on residential demolitions, United Neighborhoods for Reform discovered 2 landmark scientific studies in Baltimore and Chicago documenting the propagation of lead-based paint dust during urban demolitions. Subsequently, additional academic studies at Wayne State and UIC verified and added much to these earlier studies. Through, at times frustrating but persistent efforts of enlightening municipal and state employees to these studies' findings, UNR and other civic-minded citizens successfully achieved the passage of Oregon state laws to put proper legal weight on responsible residential demolitions, requirements, and best practices. The Portland ordinance that was mentioned, in accordance with the state best practices that went into effect July 1st of 2018, and the City Council will hear of its effectiveness and challenges and needs for improvement later this year during the DRAC subcommittee presentation. Along this journey, it became apparent that the public health benefits of deconstruction augmented the environmental and salvage benefits, further promoting the need for broadening deconstruction requirements and use. The construction, as was mentioned earlier in the panel, the construction market has seen the need and benefits of expanding deconstruction usage and filled this void effectively, overcoming initial concerns of not having the capacity to handle the additional load and acting as an impediment to new development. And again, as was earlier mentioned, the key thing is, let me reiterate, let's not understate the importance of the adding of critical construction trades training along the way. Therefore, if the council does not support this proposal, you are in essence discounting the countless hours dedicated to meetings of advisory groups and numerous workshop events that called upon the collective wisdom of a wide range of industry and public experts regarding all phases of demolitions and the benefits of deconstruction. I urge you to actively support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Barbara Kerr. Been here before. I live in East Columbia neighborhood, and I firmly believe in deconstruction. I started a company, Rejuvenation, based on salvaging and reusing house parts, and I am the United Neighborhoods for Reform representative on the DAG, the Deconstruction Advisory Group. But today I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. Mayor, I want to say I really appreciate the quote that you gave from 30 years ago. It illustrates how long we've been working on this. And by updating this ordinance, we move ahead on reducing what goes into the landfill, on reusing materials rather than using up natural resources to produce new, on decreasing lead being spread into our neighborhoods, on creating green jobs, and on the multitude of other benefits of deconstruction. To not extend the years covered would not make sense. But before congratulating ourselves on moving forward, we must be honest that until deconstruction is the way we remove all buildings, not just those built before advancing cutoff dates, there will still be more lead pulverized by mechanical demolitions. We will still be filling our landfills with materials that could have been reused to minimize depleting natural resources. And we will not have the used materials that can spawn creative reuse jobs that we haven't even imagined yet. And before we reach to pat ourselves on the back for moving forward from recycling to reuse, especially in light of how we've been having problems with recycling, we must face the fact that we need to be working on reduce. Deconstruction is reusing building materials, but we need to move up to reducing the use of materials by reusing the existing buildings. As the gentleman from DEQ said, we need to look at embodied energy, and it's more embodied in the building as it stands. Deconstruction is honorable only when a building must come down. We cannot afford to greenwash demolitions by saying, at least we are deconstructing. That existing houses are the only true greenhouses and that existing houses are the only true affordable homes are not just sound bites to be ignored. We cannot honestly say that we are a city that values sustainability if we are demolishing in the name of being green, when we know that reusing an existing building has less of a carbon footprint than new construction, no matter how much green or reused materials are involved. We cannot honestly say we are concerned about the houseless, the displaced, or even high rents if we demolish homes in the name of density rather than supporting reuse of homes to provide increased housing that people can afford. We are eliminating opportunities for the disenfranchised communities, young families, and our elders to become or remain independent rather than be forced into higher cost apartments instead of fixer-uppers. If we hide behind our deconstruction ordinance to cover up what we are doing to our housing and our communities, we have nothing to brag about.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you. I hope you will save that speech and come and give it again when we do the residential infill project, because I think it's a very important point. I want to thank John and Barbara and all of the folks who have been participating in United Neighborhoods for Reform for now 5 years. And this was an alliance of neighborhood associations from across coalitions who came to council with the not unreasonable request that homes should not be demolished with sprinkling lead and asbestos all over the neighborhood. There were those who said these are just NIMBYs, although actually it's okay to not want asbestos and lead in your backyard. There were those who said it was folks were against affordable housing, that all kinds of unkind, at best, comments were made, and you persisted. And this is the reason I think we're celebrating today, because people said that deconstruction was going to be much too expensive. They said that it wasn't going to have the outcomes that you claimed, and you persisted. And so I just want to thank you and other neighborhood associations who are here today, because you have the privilege of being able to be here on a Wednesday morning, and also representing people who also would rather not have lead and asbestos in their backyards, but can't be here. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you. Next three, please, Carla.
Are Kathy Weber, David Beemick, and Maggie.
Welcome. Come on up. Name for the record, 3 minutes each, please. You look ready to go. Would you like to start, please? Thank you.
My name's Caitlin Weber. I'm here on behalf of Restore Oregon, and as of Monday, I'm a new member of the Draft Demolition Subcommittee.
Thank you.
Mayor and City Commissioners, I'm here to express Restore Oregon's enthusiastic support for expanding the deconstruction program to include houses and duplex built in or before 1940. The pilot program has led the country in ensuring valuable and irreplaceable building materials are not wasted. It has proven successful at working out a process for the salvage and reuse of deconstructed materials, as well as suppression of hazardous materials born of demolition, and it is now has the capacity to expand. Growing the program to include more homes will uphold and strengthen Portland's goals and values, including support of a trained, diverse workforce, reduction of exposure to hazardous materials, sustainability of our city by reducing our carbon footprint and keeping usable material out of landfills, reuse of rare old-growth lumber and other materials, and perhaps most importantly for our mission, making people think twice before demolishing a historic building. Portland is now at the leading edge of an expanding deconstruction industry, which translates to more jobs, the availability of more affordable building material, better health, and a more intact historic fabric. We commend Portland City Council's initiation of a robust reuse ethic, and Restore Oregon strongly supports its expansion by approving the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You want to go ahead, sir?
Hello, my name's Dave Bennick. I'm with the Building Deconstruction Institute, and I wanted to let you guys know that I've been with you for 4 years now, supporting you and your efforts. And when you guys passed the ordinance, you showed support for our industry, and so then I wanted to return that by supporting your efforts. And so some of the things that I've been doing, training your contractors, training your workers, working with the Prime Development Contractor Program, which you mentioned, so I trained all of those folks. And what it's been about is building up the infrastructure so that when you make the leap, that we have the support to catch you, And here you are at the verge of making potentially making another leap. So I wanted to let you know that I'm here, I'm going to remain here to support you, to continue to train people, to continue to build up infrastructure. One of the things that I did as soon as you passed the ordinance, the very first thing I did was focus my efforts on buildings that were not 100 years old or older. And you see the point being that you had already accomplished that, and I no longer needed to try. I needed to try for the new buildings. So almost all the buildings that we've deconstructed in our trainings have been newer buildings, so that we have proof of concept, so you can feel like you have something, this isn't unproven ground, okay? Today, I'm here really representing 12 other cities that I'm helping across the country. So some of those cities were mentioned, actually, and I held an event in Pennsylvania last week where we got everyone together, and one of the topics was Portland. That was probably one of the main things, that they were looking to you for guidance. They were, somebody has to go first. You did. So they're ready to go second, but I want to let you know that there are 50 cities probably that will follow them, right? It's like exponential. So whatever you do here today is going to be, could be exponentially replicated in the future in a positive way. So all of the work that we've done, all of the goals that you have about employing people of color, women, our goal is to have companies that are run by people of color and women. And that's who we've actually been training. I would say maybe 80% of the contractors that I've been training fall in that category. So it's not I'm sorry, my time's up. So.
No, you still have, go ahead. Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. I think in the end, sometimes our efforts, it seems like we're trying to help a certain group. We're trying to give them advantages, to close the gap and, that sort of thing. But in our eyes, it's really, we're trying to allow people to help others. By helping them, they're going to help others. And that's really been our main focus of this program. It goes way beyond just a single company.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate that very much. Good morning, Maggie.
Hi, Maggie, Portland Homeless Town Hall. A couple of years ago, I went online and I saw the number of abandoned residential buildings in arrears on their taxes were in the hundreds. And I want to know, why can't these owners get a write-off if they donate their materials for tiny homes? How many tiny homes could you make out of these out of this reclaimed lumber from one house? That's what I want to know. Also, I want to know about how they're disposing of the lead and the asbestos materials, because I think that's a huge concern about hazardous materials. Are they going to dispose of it in a landfill where it's going to be open and it's going to be rained on and it's going to leach into water? So I think we need to pay attention to that, because that's a health issue for people. And then the other thing I would like to say is I would encourage homeowners that want to deconstruct, please consider donating or having homeless people come in and take apart your wood and let them make a tiny home with it. And also these properties that you guys are going to reclaim, I've talked to the Joint Office of Homeless Services, and what they want to do is this multi-generational duplexes, but that leaves out single disabled people who are aging, no matter what their color or their gender. And I think there's a lot of discrimination against single people, and you could take an eighth of a quarter of an acre and put on 4 to 8 tiny homes and have people living in what's called a residentially owned commons, and just have the land be owned by the government, and then have the people be a community who are organizing themselves. And I think you could do a lot of low-income little housing this way, and it's legal. Oregon has a program for this. It's legal to do it. To take single people who are low income and could never afford a home, and just, if you're demolitioning a property and you've taken over that property, and just, you guys can own the land and they will own their little home, and they will be a residentially owned commons, and they will, do all their own maintenance and landscaping and pay the insurance liability, and, but they can't afford a house by themselves.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks, all three of you. We appreciate it. Commissioner Daly.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So this is an ordinance, which means it comes back next week for a vote, but since we have advocates in the room, I just wanted to make some brief remarks. This was one of the first city issues that I got engaged in before I joined council, and I'm excited to have it come back. Many advocates at the time wanted the exemption to be decreased, including myself, but there was a real lack of capacity in the deconstruction industry, so I'm thrilled to hear that that is no longer the case. While I'd prefer to see fewer historic homes taken down, as some of you have indicated as well, Deconstruction is at least a more fitting final tribute to the superior materials and craftsmanships that went into these beautiful homes. I want to thank the state legislature for SB 871, which allowed us to establish standards around lead abatement. That issue was raised as well. And my Chief of Staff, Marshall Runkle, for leading the charge on developing that program. Portland was the first city in Oregon to establish a lead abatement standards in deconstruction and demolition. So thank you to the mayor's office, BPS staff, and the industry, and I'm really looking forward to voting yes next week.
Very good, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. I also would like to give my comments both today and next week because I think they bear repeating. This is really fantastic. I was in charge of the Bureau of Development Services from 2013 to the middle of 2017, and it was the community who came to us wanting fewer demolitions and also very concerned about when things are demolished, the safety of that. So I want to thank Nancy Thorington and the previous director, Paul Scarlett, in the Bureau of Development Services for their work. First of all, at least saying, let's notify people. But then the United Neighborhoods for Reform, you did not stop at that. You insisted that the Bureaus act, and so the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability moved forward with investigating this work. Thank you, Sean Wood and Alyssa Kane, also former director Susan Anderson, as well as the current director, Andrea Durbin. This has been a great example of inter-bureau and inter-commissioner collaboration, and I very much appreciate it. Claire Adamsick on my staff was my liaison to development services and then to neighborhood involvement, and now to the Office of Equity and Human Rights. So again, it's a matter of all of these different bureaus with different directors and commissioners working together to do really good things for our community, which are now the standard for the nation, as we heard, and glad to hear that Milwaukee and Vancouver, BC, and Palo Alto and others, and indeed, as Commissioner Udaley alluded to, now instead of 2 companies, 12 companies. That is real. These are good jobs doing good work, and I appreciate very much those who are doing the training in partnership with the Prime Contractor Development Program. Really good work. Thank you very much. I also look forward to voting aye next week.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I have the staff come back up? I just have one question. Thank you so much for your hard work on this, and I am in absolutely total support. My only question is on page 5 when we talk about enforcement and penalties. It appears extremely low for if we have a requirement. $500 is not even petty cash for a major developer. And so how did we come to those fines and the violations and the penalties? Where did they come from?
So the the enforcement fees are tiered. So a first offense, I believe, is up to $500, and then it graduates up from there. We
Only
also,
the $1,500. I mean, we're
Right.
talking about big, high-dollar contractors.
And so there's another component to that if improper use of heavy machinery is used.
I saw the
so
$10,000.
$10,000. And then we also, if it's an infraction from a certified deconstruction contractor, we have the ability to fine them, but also remove them from the list of certified contractors. So those combined basically have an even larger economic impact.
Mayor, I don't know what the will of the group is, but I'm troubled by the fact that we say this is our vision, and then we give people lots of chances to screw it up, and then when we catch them, which we rarely do, we give them a mealy fine. I cannot support this at such a low fine level. I support everything else, but I just think if you're going to hold people accountable, they got to feel it, right? This is not something they're going to feel. So that's where I am.
Mayor,
Commissioner Daly.
I agree that the fines are too low. I mean, I will support it either way, but I would like a better analysis of how we came up with those numbers and why they're not higher. I would like to see people who are violating our rules, who I'm assuming are well aware of them, pay something more commensurate with the actual impact to the environment and the value of the materials that they're wasting.
Do we know how many violations there have been?
There have been approximately 4, and some of those were related to the property owner not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that was basically improper use of heavy machinery. We've had a couple of contractors that were certified early on in the ordinance, and they violated some of the requirements, and so they were fined. They pretty quickly left the industry. They were another type of contractor, construction contractor, or something like that. And the whole reason why we have certified deconstruction contractors is to have a level of professionalism, a level of understanding of what we're talking about, and you know, if there's one thing that we've done as part of this ordinance that really works, it's making sure that we have certified contractors. So they've been trained, they're familiar with asbestos, with lead-based paint hazards, they're accountable both financially and on wanting to stay on that list. So if for some reason they do something wrong and they're not on that list, they're not getting a call the next day to offer a bid on a new project. So it's been a very small amount of infractions, and I think especially at this point, those were early on. At this point, people know what's expected. We have high level of training for these folks, and enforcement has not been an issue. So while I totally respect what you're saying, and we set that $10,000 limit for heavy machinery because we were afraid that some folks would look at that as the cost of doing business. We'll knock the house down, we'll pay the $10,000 and move on. But we haven't seen that at all.
And every house that gets taken down, whether it's demolished or deconstructed, has to have a demolition permit, is that correct?
That's correct.
And presumably the development services staff tell them when they get their permit that you have to deconstruct this house?
It's essentially all automated. So when they come in for their demolition permit, the permit system pings the assessor database, populates the year built of the structure, and if it's literally a calculation less than or equal to 1916 currently, it drops in a process line that BPS has to review, and then we make sure that there's a certified contractor associated with that project. They let us know that through a online portal that only they have access to with a password. So we know someone's not telling us, oh, this contractor's going to do it, it'll be deconstructed, only to find out later they weren't involved at all. And then once the project's complete, the certified deconstruction contractor follows up with a post-deconstruction form and receipts for the materials. So I have really zero concern that we're not getting these houses deconstructed. There's multiple points in the permit review and inspection process that we would catch that.
Commissioner Fish.
2 things. One is, I might suggest, because I think it's a good question to ask and we need some more data, I would just suggest that we kick this issue to the DRAC, and with an instruction to have staff update the DRAC on what is the level of compliance. Is there a problem with compliance? And if so, would an adjustment in the penalty schedule, we can take that up at any time.
That's correct.
As an amendment. I would feel more comfortable doing that on the basis of actual data that is presented to us. If I could also just add my strong support to this ordinance, and just add one other piece of history. Commissioner Fritz and I were on the council when then Mayor Adams decided to take the Planning Bureau and bring sustainability into their core mission, and thus was rebranded Planning and Sustainability. And since then, we have been focused on sustainability in a way that the city really wasn't as much before. The deconstruction ordinance occurred under Mayor Hales, and I'm just thinking back to the 4 years or when we did this. I remember there was some pushback and some big questions out there. It is extraordinary now to see the success which you've achieved, the number of certified contractors, the number of people who are benefiting from jobs, good jobs, and the opportunity to grow in those jobs, the environmental impacts, of course. But I want to acknowledge that while this is a proud day, as is some other things we're doing around fossil fuel infrastructure and other things, it started with a vision around sustainability. And I think you can point to each mayor that Amanda and I've served with has helped move that conversation forward a little bit around sustainability. And I'm personally delighted to hear that Portland is a leader nationally in this conversation. We're going to be coming to council soon with an idea that's long overdue around the environment, where I think we're 171st in the country to act. So it's nice to hear about our leadership and the impact of our action and encouraging other cities to follow suit. I just also want to thank our professional team for their great work.
Thank you,
This is really good work. There were a lot of details to be worked out. There are a lot of reasons why this could have gone sideways, and it's a credit to your doggedness and professionalism that we're able to have a hearing today where we have the chorus coming out and saying, expand the program. That's really a credit to your good work, and we thank you for that.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. I just wanted to unwrap an acronym that my colleague used, Development Review Advisory Committee. When you said DRAC, I didn't know what the heck you were talking about.
Well, it's
One
Halloween.
of the funnier
It's
ones.
Halloween.
Yeah, good old Drac.
They're a balanced committee that often makes recommendations. I just think it does seem like that's the logical place to go and look at the fee schedule and have them make a recommendation to us.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I think that's a very fine idea. And again, I don't want to slow down this process at all because I absolutely, totally support the work that's been done and the expansion. I just think that if we're going to hold people accountable, we got to really hold them accountable, and $500 just won't do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, and so there's going to be absolutely no suspense leading up to next week's vote. Since I brought this, obviously I support it, but I just want to add something here. There is a sense of urgency to the work we're doing around the climate, and this is a part of it. And as I threatened a couple of weeks ago, you're going to hear the term circular economy a lot more in this chamber going forward, and this is a key part of it. We started with the 100% renewable energy ordinance. We worked on the plastics ordinance. We're bringing back the fossil fuel ordinance so it will actually stick because it will be modernized and it will comport with the guidance that the judge gave us when they rejected the 2016 platform that we'd put forward. And so this deconstruction ordinance expansion then comports with that. And there's a lot more that we're going to be doing. And I want to appreciate the work that the BPS team has done. I want to appreciate the work that all the leaders and the advocates in the community have continued to do on this hard work. Obviously, my team will continue to provide what leadership we need to provide to keep this process moving forward. And I'll do what I need to do as mayor to work with my colleagues. And collectively, we will continue to lead. So I just want to appreciate the great work that you've done. I agree with Commissioner Fish that the question of the schedule, particularly given that we're talking about a relatively small number of violations, it is a legitimate issue that Commissioner Hardesty has raised. It is one that the DRAC should in fact take up, but I don't think it needs to slow down this ordinance in any way. So without further ado, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading.
Great.
Thank you, and thanks
Thank
for
you,
everyone
everybody.
who testified and everybody who helped work on this. Next up is item number, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. All right, next item, number 1015.
Proclaim November 11, 2019 to be Veterans Day.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, November 9th marks the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Veterans Day is coming, and as the only veteran on the Portland City Council, I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate all veterans, veterans of today, veterans of yesteryear, and I want to remind people that we can disagree with war, but we cannot not support people who step up when asked by their country to step up. We can disagree with leadership, but we cannot disagree with people who put their life on the line to protect us in times of war all over the world. And I just twisted the mayor's arm to allow me to read the resolution. We should honor all veterans, and unfortunately, we have way too many veterans living on the street, suffering from mental health issues, alcohol and drug addiction, and totally disconnected from their community. For me, it kind of breaks my heart that we send children to war, and then we expect them to shake it off when they get back to their families without support. And that's not right. We can do better. We must do better.
Very good, Commissioner Hardesty, and I'll let you read the proclamation when we finish up the presentation, and I appreciate that introduction. Colleagues, as you know, we bring forth a proclamation marking November 11th is Veterans Day every year. This is the least that we can do to honor the brave uniformed men and women, both past and present. Before we hear from our panel today, I'd also like to acknowledge Nicholas Carroll. Nicholas is the designer behind the replica Berlin Wall display, which many of us have seen in the north atrium of City Hall. We encourage people to take a look at it. The display was strikingly accurate and powerful in its message. So we want to thank Nicholas for that amazing work. And so now I'll pass it to Con Tran to start us off. Good morning, Con.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us to present to you today. My name is Con Tran. I'm a veteran of our United States Army. I served 5 years in the Army, active duty, with the tour in Afghanistan. And the skills and experiences I learned in my time in service, I still use today. On most days, you can find me on the 3rd floor of City Hall, where I proudly serve as a member of Mayor Wheeler's staff. But today, I come to you as a member of the city's Veteran Empowerment Team, or VET. I am joined today by 3 amazing colleagues who will soon share their stories with you. But before I turn the mic over, I'd like to thank you, the council, for your support that you have shown to the veteran community and to the veterans inside the city as well. In my advocacy, either on my own or through the VET team, I have personally seen engagement and support from each of your offices in all aspects, in all capacities, and on some occasions, I've even worked with your staff directly. The VET team and the city have done some great things for the veteran community, some of which my colleagues will share later on. But there's always more work to be done, and the VET team takes this challenge, and we look forward to this challenge. Finally, I would like to acknowledge Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. Commissioner Hardesty holds many titles, as we all know. One of them is veteran. For those of you who don't know, Commissioner Hardesty served in the Navy, where she had the opportunity to travel all around the world, and she chose Portland as her home, so that means something. Commissioner Hardesty actively participates in almost every veteran event in the city. I've seen her myself personally many times, and she has always been outspoken about her support for the veteran community in Portland. So, Commissioner Hardesty, thank you for being a role model and a leader for veterans everywhere. Now, Council, I've taken up enough of your time. I would like to pass it to my colleague, Sebone Penn, to share some words. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor, City Council.
Morning.
Morning. My name is Sebone Penn, and I'm one of the VET leadership team. I'm here to tell you my story. Our veterans have served this country with honor and courage. Now, it is our time to serve our veterans by not only providing an opportunity for employment, but also allowing them to excel in leadership roles with the city. It takes courage to serve in the military because it's a call for leadership. Before my employment with the city, I was on active duty deployed to Iraq in the combat zones of Iraq. During that time, I've experienced many pretty much death, close call death. It kind of chokes me up a little bit because it's just still in my mind of that experience. The military is not for everyone. For me, I felt the sense of honor and duty while I was serving the United States Army. After my time serving in Iraq, my challenge was from combat zone to civilian life. That was my challenge. That was my personal challenge. And I am very thankful that I've overcome that challenge, and I'm very thankful that, that I'm alive today from that experience. It's time to take action by providing leadership opportunities for veterans within the organization. I would like to highlight currently with the vet team, we're collaborating with Team Red, White, and Blue app. This is an app that provides veterans, their family, and friends with access to thousands of physical activities, social and service-oriented events led by volunteer members throughout the city, the state, and national level. Lastly, thank you for letting me tell you my story, Mayor, City Council.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Good
Good
morning.
morning, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having us. My story is I'm a Navy vet. I work in civic life in the noise department. My dad was career Air Force, and the highlight of my young growing up experience was he received orders to an Army base, Army post in Germany in the 1980s. So I lived 12 miles from the East German border as a teenager. And they had tours there, but my parents would never let me go. And so I would hear from people what it was like. They actually had armed guards, and there was a white line in the ground where you couldn't cross. Otherwise, you'll trigger the interest of the East German guards. So while we lived in Germany, my grandfather, who was a veteran of the Army, who served in World War II, we would go to some of the historical sites that he fought in the battles. So that was like a very educational experience for me. And part of the genesis of the project that I created this year for the Veterans Display in City Hall is the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which for those of us who grew up in the Cold War period, we know what it was like, the euphoria when this thing that we thought would last forever came tumbling down, people celebrating on top on November 9th, 1989. I wish the younger generation knew what that optimism felt like. So the project that I wanted to have people understand what Berlin was all about and how the American military contributed to that, as well as the British and the French militaries that occupied Berlin and West Germany. So as a young man, I served in the Navy in Italy, and I got to meet people who used to be in the Hungarian army, and we got to exchange stories, and that was very meaningful. And what I learned is the importance of allies. We probably couldn't have done this without our European allies. We helped secure Europe for freedom, and it's a new world. I mean, there are challenges now that our military has different challenges to face, but I think without allies, we couldn't do it. We couldn't make it in the world. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing it.
Could
I'm
you put
sorry you
your-
didn't put your name in the record, so if you could do that, please.
Oh, Nicholas Carroll, sorry about that.
It's Nicholas, we appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name's Tammy Mayer, and I've worked with the Portland Police Bureau as a program manager for just over 4 years. Interesting story. When I was born, it was at the tail end of Vietnam, and in the hospital, people would come up to my mother and go, "Oh, you're so lucky you had a girl," because they didn't have to worry about the draft and me entering the military. Very few people in my family are military. I have a couple uncles that served in Korea for very short periods of time. And lo and behold, I grow up, and in the college, I decided I was going to join the Air Force. I graduated from Portland State University with an Administration of Justice degree and was commissioned in the Air Force through the ROTC program at University of Portland. I did just over 20 years as a security forces officer, which is equivalent to military police for the other branches. I had 10 assignments in my 20 years and 3 combat deployments. Of those assignments and 1 deployment, it was as the commander or chief of police, as you will, for the civilian side, type equivalent positions where I was responsible for up to 434 airmen, $6.2 billion in military aircraft, nuclear weapons, and facilities. During my time, I had the honor of working with some of the most dedicated and selfless individuals I've ever met. My time in the military, excuse me, has taught me integrity, service before self, and to strive for excellence in all I do. Not long after I started at PPB, I discovered the Veterans Empowerment Team, and I started attending the meetings as my schedule permit. The VET allows military members to reconnect with that sense of community that we kind of miss after leaving the military through shared experiences, volunteering opportunities, and assisting other veterans find employment after leaving the service. Veterans in the workplace today come with unique skills, experience, job training, and a perseverance to overcome some of the most stressful and harshest conditions. They can be an asset to any organization. They have a sense of duty, work well in diverse teams, are able to problem solve and adapt to changing conditions. They are often well organized, disciplined, and self-confident. I think sometimes employers are a little weary of hiring veterans as they can be seen as more outspoken, come with baggage, or just don't understand how some of the skills like infantry or similar will translate over into the civilian or corporate world. Sometimes the veterans don't do themselves any favors when attempting to translate those skills into experiences and during the job hunting and interview process. But if given the chance and empowered in the work, they may surprise you by their creativity and ingenuity.
Thank you very much. Thanks, all four of you. And now we'll take some council remarks, and then we'll ask the commissioner to read the proclamation. Commissioner Daly,
Oh,
did you have a
sure,
comment?
yeah. Well, thank you for being here today, and I want to especially acknowledge Nicholas Carroll, although the mayor has already done that, who works in the noise office within Civic Life, and I'm want to encourage everyone to go view the.
It's not up.
Oh, it
It
did.
had to be taken down because
no.
our sister city in Russia had the display. They had the reservation for this week.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, hopefully we can post some photos. I come in the back door,
Oh.
so I haven't been
There's
downstairs
definitely a
in
lot of
while.
photos if
Okay,
anyone wants
great.
to see it.
Well, the sentiment is still there.
Yes.
It was great. We
And I just want to say, somewhat similar to what Commissioner Hardesty said, you don't have to agree with U.S. military policy to support veterans, and I definitely support our veterans. I know that working for the city is incredibly stressful for all of us, but maybe particularly stressful for, I'm not going to call it baggage, but many of us do have a history of trauma, and it's real. And I want to encourage all the veterans that work for the city to check out Veterans Empowerment Team, or at least take advantage of existing resources, because there are a lot out there. We all need to take better care of ourselves and manage our stress. And that is it. Happy Veterans Day in advance.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service to the city. Nicholas, you mentioned that the Berlin Wall would not have happened without European allies. My grandfather served in the trenches in World War I. He volunteered when he was underage because he felt so strongly about the cause. And he used to say that we were just waiting for the United States to come into the war, because then we knew we would win. And I think it was the same with World War II as well. I know it was the same, that we were just waiting in Europe for the United States to come in. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for the great sacrifices. I also wanted to mention that we have had and continue to have bureau directors who are veterans. So in terms of being outspoken, having baggage perhaps, or certainly having the thrust to get things done, I hired Dante James to be the first director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and he got stuff done. Similarly, Mike Abate in Parks and now Mike Stewart in Water are Navy veterans. And there's a legacy that, and a leadership training that comes with your service. And I just want to say I appreciate it. And I'm very glad that the council recently passed so that you don't have to get to the Veterans Empowerment Team on your lunchtime, that you can now do it on work time, because we recognize the value of your participating in the diverse empowered employees of Portland. So thank you. Oh, and also, I think, and others of my colleagues will be at the Veterans Day Parade, the Hollywood Veterans Day Parade on Monday. So folks are welcome to join any of the teams. I know that the Vets team has an entry. I have one. I know the mayor has one. So please, everybody come and join in, because it's a really fun community event.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
Commissioner Fritz, I forgot, so I'm also participating in the parade. What time does the parade kick off on Monday?
I think it's 9:30.
9:30. So that's in Hollywood. It is a terrific event. And Tony Starlight used to be the MC. I don't know whether he still does that, but he's a superb MC. So we look forward to seeing as much of the community as possible at that event. Thank you all for your service and for sharing your stories. My dad was Navy and my grandfather was Army. So growing up, I was, there were no shortage of stories about their experience. Interestingly, after my dad died a little over 20 years ago, we discovered a box in storage that had all of his correspondence home. And my wife is an archivist professionally. I'm a archivist/hoarder. At some point, we're going to go through the box and organize his letters, but his every letter he wrote back to any member of his family, and I guess to my future mother, has all been preserved. So we look forward to mining that treasure chest of memories. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Hardesty, for the proclamation today. And I hope that as we strive to be a model employer, we continue to reduce barriers so that veterans feel welcome working for the city of Portland and continuing their careers. That's the least that we can do in recognition of their service. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, and I want to thank our affinity group and our city employees who come and they share their experiences with VestCon. I personally want to thank you again for your commitment not only to this issue, but the hard work that you do in the mayor's office every day. We appreciate it very much. And so with that, I'll ask Commissioner Hardesty to read the proclamation on behalf of the City Council.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I do, I just want to say it's kind of ironic that this will be the first time in my adult life that I will have a paid holiday on Veterans Day. And it just feels kind of ironic, right? Because now that I am a city employee, I have that honor. And so I want to take a moment and just recognize those veterans who will be working because they don't have the opportunity to be off on Veterans Day. They will continue to do the things they do every single day. And we should not assume that everyone who's on a holiday is a veteran or everyone who's working isn't a veteran on that day. I also want to really appreciate the Veterans Empowerment Team because I think an opportunity to really provide a community for veterans, because no matter how much you want to understand, someone who is not a veteran will never understand what it's like to be a veteran, right? People can be empathetic, they can be kind, but they don't necessarily have that shared experience. So being able to have that shared experience publicly and in your workplace is a very cool opportunity. And Con, it's always a pleasure to work with you. It's funny to me. You smile through everything, no matter how tough it is, what we're doing. You just smile through it. And I think veterans do that. Veterans have learned that, it's about getting the work done. It's about and not caring who gets credit, because in the military you don't actually always get credit for the fine work you do. You do it because you need to. It's the right thing to do. So thank you all for being here. And on behalf of the entire City Council, I will now read the resolution, and I'm assuming we're gonna have a photo op when that's over, because that's how we roll around here. Whereas November 9th, 2019 marks the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which symbolized the end of the Cold War period, during which our military played a significant role in securing peace in Europe. And whereas the endurance of the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard have exemplified their selfishness and steadfast commitment while risking their lives to ensure our freedom. And whereas by tirelessly defending our nation and our allies against mutual threats to democracy, veterans have earned and deserve the highest degree of respect and support. And whereas wounded and suffering military members who return home honor us with their inspiring dignity, perseverance, and valor. And whereas we admire and stand beside the families and loved ones of those who have served and currently serve and the immense burden they bear. And whereas we are continually grateful for the freedoms we enjoy in Portland and throughout the United States due to the service and sacrifice of our military. Now, therefore, the City Council, City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby declare November the 11th, 2019 to be Veterans Day in Portland, Oregon, and encourage all residents to honor those who have served and those who currently serve to preserve our values of justice, freedom, and democracy. Thank you all.
Thank you. So with that, if we could just come down here in front, and we'll get a photo. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Sure.
When I got my degree at PSU, I wanted to be an officer here. I wouldn't parachute out of the plane.
My goal was to be an astronaut. Be a test pilot. Astronaut. That, it didn't work out, so.
That would be a good gig. Thank you very much. Thanks again. Thank you. Appreciate it. Come on, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Haley had asked for a 2-minute recess. We'll take a 2-minute recess. Carla, could you please read item 1019?
Yes. Authorize 3 Oregon Impact Traffic Enforcement grants for a total of $90,000 from the state of Oregon for officer overtime reimbursement, and authorize the mayor or chief of police to execute future Oregon Impact Grant agreements.
Very good. Colleagues, item 1019 authorizes 3 Oregon Impact Traffic Enforcement grants for a total of $90,000 from the state of Oregon. The grants provide overtime reimbursement and authorize the mayor or chief of police to execute future Oregon Impact Grant agreements. The 3 grants are, number 1, the High Visibility Enforcement, otherwise known as HVE, formerly known as Dewey Enforcement. Number 2, the Distracted Driving Enforcement, and number 3, Pedestrian Safety Enforcement. The HVE grant allows for directed missions to impact impaired driving. With the legalization of marijuana, there has been an increase of drug-impaired drivers on our streets. This grant will help bring attention to the fact drug-impaired driving is just as dangerous as alcohol-impaired driving. The Distracted Driving Enforcement Grant is in its 2nd year. Distracted driving has now become a leading cause in all crashes throughout the country. PPB will do traffic enforcement missions to curb this dangerous driving behavior. In addition to vehicle fatalities, our city has also experienced pedestrian-related fatalities. We heard about that this morning. This is more than a third of the total amount of fatalities in the city so far this year. The Pedestrian Safety Grant will help PPB to raise awareness through enforcement to both motor vehicle drivers as well as pedestrians. This grant will help to reduce the high number of pedestrians killed in the city each year. The Portland Police Bureau will focus on the high crash corridors as we do with the speed grant and utilize crash data in order to best impact those locations that are the most problematic in our city. With us today to present this item is Sergeant Ty Engstrom and Captain Lorenko. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're grateful to have this time to come talk with you a little bit today. I think you're all very familiar with these grants. They are grants that we bring forth each year. Some of them have been going longer than others. They help to augment our staffing. As you know, we're pretty understaffed in the traffic division, and these grants allow our officers, when they have extra time in their personal lives, to come in and put a higher presence of police on the streets. So in a way, it helps to augment our staffing levels and help to make the city's streets a little safer out there. And as you already alluded, Mr. Mayor, our number of fatalities is pretty high this year, getting close to one of our highest years in recent history. So this will help us, along with the other grants that'll come forth next week, to help put more police officers on the street to educate the public and enforce the laws.
And I would like to make it clear, it doesn't change what we're doing now. It's not going to give us more hours on the street moving forward. It's going to allow us to maintain the status quo. It's going to allow us to continue the level of work that we've been doing.
Very good. Thank you. Colleagues, questions? Public testimony on this item, Carla?
They both left.
They both left. Okay. Well, Commissioner Hardesty, did you have a question?
Thank you. No, Mayor, I just wanted to put on the public record how grateful I am that my questions were answered in detail prior to us coming to the city council. But I want to caution us, if the police always start off with staffing shortages, then some people tend to stop listening because you've had staffing shortages for a long time, and there are decisions that are being made within the police bureau that determines how many people are deployed in different places. So I appreciate the great work that you're doing, and I appreciate these grants and totally support them. But if every police officer that shows up here starts their conversation with, we have staffing shortages, it's an excuse for non-action in my view, and that's my personal perspective. But I want you to know I listen better when you answer my questions directly, and I listen better when you don't start off with, I have staffing shortages, so this is why we're having the conversation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate a couple stats, even though there's very few people left in this room. There may be some people watching at home, and that is 56% of traffic deaths involve people who are driving under the influence. The majority of cyclists and pedestrians killed in in crashes are obeying the law. And 42 Portlanders have lost their lives this year so far in traffic fatalities. I wasn't here when Vision Zero was established, but it's my understanding that there was a decision to deprioritize enforcement. One of the 3 E's of Vision Zero is it's education, engineering, and enforcement. And that was out of concern for disparate impacts on communities of color. Unfortunately, the starkest disparate impact has been in East Portland, our most racially diverse district, where pedestrians are twice as likely to die as anywhere else in the city. So it's clear to me that enforcement is a critical piece of reducing traffic deaths and reaching our Vision Zero goals. PBOT and PPB must work together to improve enforcement. I've repeatedly called on the Bureau to allocate adequate resources to traffic enforcement, given the number of people who are dying on our streets. And I thank the mayor for planning a work session on this issue in the coming months. Finally, I'll just say that radar cameras, whether they're speed or red light cameras, are effective, affordable, non-biased way to greatly reduce speeding and running red lights in our city. It's been a painfully slow process to just get a few of them up. We don't have adequate resources within traffic enforcement to issue the number of citations that are being earned on our roadways right now. But that is at the top of my list to make more progress on that. So thank you for what you do. I know it's a really difficult job and that you share our aspiration to reduce fatalities.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the work that you do. And there is no subject that comes before the city council that we have more division of thought and idea and philosophy than policing issues. So let's just acknowledge that. We all are very passionate about this, but we have different perspectives, and honorable people can disagree. The issue of staffing is going to continue to be a critical one for me, because I do believe the Police Bureau is critically understaffed. I have an honest disagreement with some of my colleagues on that, but where we do agree is we all agree that traffic enforcement is critically understaffed. And so there's a debate as to whether or not we can simply remove officers from other functions and move them over to traffic enforcement, or whether, as I believe, doing that would actually just open up and expose us to other problems in other parts of the public safety spectrum. But I guess you're in a relatively good position because we all support the work you do. We all want to see more enforcement, as Commissioner Udaley very, I think, succinctly laid out as part of the Vision Zero strategy. And in addition to the enforcement, the part that we never talk about that we need to talk about is the behavior of the people who are actually engaged in distracted driving, drunk driving, impaired driving, speeding, and disregarding other people who are on the streets. And that takes time and money as well, and it doesn't necessarily have to be traffic enforcement that does that work. It doesn't even have to be the Police Bureau that does that work, but we need to do that work, and we need to start talking about that as well. Because the problem isn't just a lack of enforcement, it's that people are being really stupid, reckless, irresponsible, and thoughtless when they drive through the city. And we need to do something collectively about that. But you guys have been great. You have worked really hard to accommodate some of the big public events that we have planned in this city. I gotta say that the first iteration of the new Portland Marathon, you guys were A+. A+.
Thank you.
And I know you worked really hard both in the planning leading up to that and the execution on the day of, and it showed. And so I want to thank you for that while I've got you here. So we don't have public testimony. City Council filled the public testimony time anyway, but thank you for your good work. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, 1020.
Accept report recommending a contract award to ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corporation for the Justice Center Elevator Modernization Project not to exceed $1,535,827.
Greetings.
Good morning.
Which one, read the other
And
one
we
too?
have, correct, we have two.
Okay. Read the other item.
Oh,
1021.
you want them together? Okay,
Yes.
and 1021, please. Sorry about that.
Accept report recommending a contract award to ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corporation for the Smart Park Elevator Modernization Project not to exceed $3,218,005.
Good morning.
Morning.
Scott Schneider from Procurement Services. You have before you two procurement reports this morning, each recommending an award of a contract for elevator modernization services. Both of these contracts resulted from the same competitive solicitation. The first is for 4 elevators in the Justice Center building for a not to exceed amount of $1,535,827. The second is for 8 elevators in 3 separate Smart Park garages for a not to exceed amount of $3,218,005. On June 20th, 2019, the Chief Procurement Officer advertised invitation to bid 1281, and on July 31st, 2 bids were received for the Justice Center modernization, and 1 bid was received for the Smart Park modernization.
Can I ask you, why
Yeah.
would only one bid? I mean, that seems like a fairly lucrative business, and it's a competitive business, so why only one?
Yeah, I think that there are a limited number of firms that do the work. For the Justice Center modernization, we did get 2 bids.
Okay.
When we asked the second bidder why they didn't bid on the Smart Park modernization, they said it was too much work to take on at one time.
Sorry,
Too much work to take on at one time.
Too big a contract?
Too big, right, too big of a contract.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, thanks. I was just curious.
The city issued a notice of intent to award contracts for both modernization projects to ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corp. On August 6th. No protests were received. ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corp. Has a current City of Portland business tax account and is in compliance with the city's contracting requirements. It is not a COBID-certified, minority-owned, women-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned, or emerging small business. There are no subcontractors on these projects, and based on the engineer's estimates, the Bureau's confidence level for the procurement is high. If council has any questions about the solicitation process, I can answer those, or representatives from Facility Services are here in chambers to answer questions about the projects.
Colleagues, Commissioner Hardesty?
I'm just curious, going back to the mayor's original question, what is the universe of people who are available to do elevator upgrade, and how diverse is that pool?
Hello, my name's Gianna Giroux, and I'm the project manager on the Justice Center, and both Jeremy Hunt and I were at the pre-bid meetings. I would just tell you that we had a list of about 12 different firms that we reached out to and contacted. Some of those were too busy to consider coming, so they just did not. But we did end up with 4 bidders at the pre-bid meeting. As far as diversity within them, I can't tell you a lot about their staffing, because I'm not that familiar with their staffing. But there was a variety of firms, from small local firms to large firms. I think the only large firm that we were not able to contact was Otis, and otherwise, which happened to have been busy on several of our existing city buildings. But we did have 4 come through the walkthrough. We actually had, on the Justice Center, 3 bids turned in. One of them was past the deadline because he had pulled it off. So, and that one was one of the smaller ones. The 2 that did turn it in on the Justice Center were pretty good-sized ones, and as he mentioned, even they were saying how busy they were and how, backed up they were for several months, so.
Thank you so much for that info, and I'm appreciative of your response. I guess my question is, as we continue to do elevator repairs, are we going to continue to contract with the same individual company because they tend to be the only one that, one of 2 that will bid on these contracts? My concern is that we get comfortable with people that we contract with, and we're not more creative about looking for other opportunities to help people build wealth in our community, a diverse group of people to build wealth in our community.
I appreciate that concern, and I think we really made an effort to reach out to several. As I indicated, I mean, one of those other firms was so busy on other projects that the city had. There is some benefit to having some consistency, especially when you get to the smart parks with some of the repeating wins. But we do not make that part of our selection reason, other than trying to make sure we have a diverse group when we first go out to bid.
Which is not quite the same as having a diverse group of people that we contract with.
True, but we can't force them to bid.
Very good. Any further questions? All right, this is short and to the point with regard
moved.
to the report. 1020, Commissioner Fish has moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty.
I know that this is work that we planned for well in advance because we know elevators need repair and we know that these contracts are coming down the pike. I continue to be just a little frustrated with the reasoning that we have that we don't have a diverse pool of contractors that we are cultivating along the way. I just hope that we that we take the opportunity to be creative. I suspect there'll be more of these same kind of contracts coming down the pipe. And it's just really disappointing that we seem to have the built-in excuses for the contractor rather than actually encouraging the contractor to be more creative and create more opportunity. If we say as a city, we want to make sure that women and people of color have opportunities with city dollars, then we actually have to act differently than we've done in the past. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The report's adopted. 1021, please. Anybody make
Move the
a motion?
report.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty. Wheeler.
Aye. The report's accepted. Thanks a lot for your presentation. Short and to the point. Item 1022, if you could read it, and I'm going to pull it.
Amend Finance and Revenue Code to streamline the procurement and contracting process.
All right, so I'm going to pull this back to my office, and it'll come back next week. Item 1023, I have a question of my colleagues. I don't know if Commissioner Udaley is coming back. Does anybody know?
No, 4 votes is enough, Mayor.
Okay, good. I have a doctor's appointment, so I'm just trying to decide how quickly to move things. 1023, please.
1023, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County for the transfer of $4 million from the Multnomah County Supportive Housing Fund to the Portland Housing Bureau for development of 70 housing units at the West Wind Apartments project.
3 years ago, Portland voters made history by passing our first ever affordable housing bond. Last month, we announced the new projects selected under the bond opportunity solicitation and had another historic announcement. We've now met and in most cases exceeded our goals promised to Portland voters with 1,424 new housing units open or in the development pipeline. Multnomah County has been an essential partner in our community-wide success. Their $4 million capital contribution for the West Wind Apartments and additional support services through the Joint Office of Homeless Services advances our goal of bringing new, permanent supportive housing units into our community. And with that, I'll turn this over to Shannon. It looks like you're up first, Shannon, and then Mark will play second fiddle today. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioner. Shannon Callahan of the Portland Housing Bureau. I'm pleased to be here today to bring you this intergovernmental agreement to authorize a $4 million contribution from Multnomah County to the redevelopment of the West Wind Apartments. The West Wind is one of 12 housing bond projects identified. It was announced along with 9 other projects this September after a competitive process. All told, these developments will be home to over 2,900 Portlanders. The West Wind itself will be a newly constructed 7-story building. It will provide 100 new homes 70 of which will provide supportive housing. All of the 70 units with supportive housing will have rent support from Home Forward. The majority of the residents will be individuals transitioning from homelessness who experience a disabling condition. The support services will include mental health, healthcare services, as well as culturally specific support delivered through service partnerships with the Native American Rehabilitation Association, also known as NARA, and Central Cities Concerns culturally specific programs. The building will also include space for community services and resident art space for art classes and workshops. We expect construction to begin commencement next fall.
So Mayor and Commissioners, good morning. My name is Mark Joel, and I'm the Director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services. I'm mostly here just to express my appreciation for the partnership that this represents between the city and the county when it comes to expanding the inventory of permanent supportive housing in our community. Together, we launched less than 2 years ago an initiative to create 2,000 new units of permanently supportive housing for folks in our community, individuals and families who need deep subsidy and also need ongoing support services in order to ensure that they're able to stay in their housing. And the information that you have before you, because of the work that we have done together, shows that we are now at 792 units towards our goal of 2,000 units, either already in place or in the pipeline, and that is really exceptional. It's a testament to the resources that the community has provided and the coordination between the city and the county, the Housing Authority, our state partners, making all of this possible. So the West Wind is almost 10% of that 792. It's one important project among many, and it is a good day to be here and to celebrate the progress that we're making. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Question?
Commissioner
Director-
Fritz.
oh, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead. Commissioner Fritz, then Commissioner Fish.
Thank you. Where is the money coming from for the services for the permanent supportive housing?
So in this particular project, we have a partnership with the Multnomah County Health Department that is likely to provide the majority of the support services funding. As we always do, we'll be looking to leverage the clinical services that people need that are typically Medicaid funded. So we'll use general fund to provide the housing placement and retention support services that we can't bill Medicaid for.
And whose general fund ours?
So that is in the joint office's budget, but is in partnership with the health department.
Okay, so it's already in the budget.
Yeah, for this project.
Great, thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
So this is, I think, a good opportunity to do a little PSA for PSH. Because Commissioner Fritz got at something very important. In the presentations that we have received on permanent supportive housing, we've learned at least two things. One is that to serve the people that we want to serve, we have to have a significant subsidy to drive down the cost so that people at 0 to 30% of MFI are eligible. And second is we have to have funding for the services. And it turns out that over the last couple of years, as the public has become more focused on the housing crisis and focused on homelessness, that the public actually understands that for this to be successful, you've got to have those services. And furthermore, understands that having a caseworker and those services might be the difference between a successful tenancy or not, or someone turning their lives around and getting a second chance. So because Commissioner Fritz raised it, I think it's important to put on the table that we've set an audacious goal of 2,000 units. I'm pleased to see that we're making progress. Was that a picture of the West Wind?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very attractive building. So, we're making steady progress. But the flaw in the ointment, the hole in our system is having adequate resources to fund those services. And the reality is we are simply not going to be waiting to be bailed out by the federal government or by the state government. They just, right, we cannot expect in the short term that that's going to happen. The public understands that those services are crucial to the success of these programs. So in my view, and in the view of many others, we're going to have a new revenue source at some point. We're going to have a thoughtful conversation about how to generate substantial money to provide those services. So while I'm delighted we're making progress, the West Wind looks like a great deal, I'm a big believer in the joint office, the reality check is we are going to need new revenue to close the gap on services. And I look forward to the council having that conversation as we head into the new year.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for your presentation. This has nothing to do with what's in front of me at the moment, but I continue to say to both of you that what we're calling affordable housing is really not affordable housing. So while today Commissioner Fish is talking about 30% and below MFI, do you have any data on the people who are being turned away because they can't afford the affordable housing units that are coming on the market? I mean, when we talk 80% of MFI, when we talk 60% of MFI, do we have any data at all? Are we collecting that data? And if so, where do I find it?
Commissioner, I don't believe I have any data readily available for you, but I will go back and check with my team on that. The Housing Bureau supports housing with our direct financing at 60% area median income and below. And of course, the greatest need is below 30% AMI. This building will support 70 households that essentially have no income.
Yes,
So
I mean,
the,
this is-
so the rent support is really kind of some of the magic to making sure that we're able to support people who are, especially those folks who are on Social Security disability or otherwise. But I'll be happy to follow up and see what I can get for you on that.
I would be greatly appreciative, because we're going to be asked to vote on better housing by design, and we're going to be asked to vote on a whole host of other housing strategies, right? But if we're not clear about what is really housing that people can afford to live in, then we will continue to incentivize the wrong end of the housing market. And so I think we really, I desperately need that information so that I'm able to make really good decisions. When we say affordable, what do we really, really mean?
Yeah, and the National Low Income Housing Coalition does an annual report that came out relatively recently where they break out, they show the number of extremely low-income households, so folks making 30% and below, and how many available units that rent at levels that are affordable to that community exist. So you're able to see the gap. That's often how we are able to identify what the deficit is of deeply affordable housing in our community for that population. So I can also forward you that information. It's some of the best data we have.
And we do know that for the Portland area, but what I heard you say, Commissioner, was specifically are people applying that are then rejected for the housing, and I don't know that I have that information. We definitely have the need in the community, and it is definitely the deeply affordable housing for folks below 0 to 30.
Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
Is this the single biggest investment in permanent supportive housing in any one project in recent history? I'm trying to remember the last time. I mean, we are constantly asking to bring the MFI down to provide services for people that have either no income or very limited income. I don't remember the last time a project penciled out with this many units of permanent supportive housing. Is it?
We have a number of units in the pipeline that are coming forward that will be dealing with 0 to 30, but this is a pretty substantial step. We have not done something of this building type with 70 units of supportive housing in quite some
Probably since the Buckler
time.
Commons.
Yeah.
Since Buckler
I think so. I can't think of another building that had 70 PSH units in one building.
That's quite an accomplishment.
The
in terms of
Joyce will
financing.
be, is also, the redevelopment of the Joyce will be coming to council at some point in the future, and that will have about 69 units of supportive housing with deeply affordable as well. So they're relatively comparable, but this building is brand new with 100 units, so it is substantial.
Sorry. Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just following up on the affordability question, it does get confusing because there's really a big A affordability and a little a affordability. When we are talking about affordable housing here with the Housing Bureau, we're talking about big A affordable as defined by HUD, When other people are talking about affordable housing, they may just be talking about housing that's affordable to anyone relative to their income, which is 30%. That's the rule of thumb, 30% of your income. We have to follow HUD guidelines, is my understanding. And when we're talking about publicly owned housing, permanently affordable housing, we are devoting our dollars to 60% of MFI and below. In the private sector, we cannot compel them to build anything other than what's prescribed through inclusionary zoning, which is 60% or 80% of median family income, correct? I don't think that we're going to find meaningful data of people who are being denied housing because they don't meet the income guidelines, because they're probably not applying. But we do know roughly what the need is in each category, and it's staggering, all told. It's, what, 24,000 affordable units. It was the number that we were hearing 5 years ago. Unfortunately, the inflow of people into that category of need hasn't really slowed down, and the housing that's being built by the private industry is largely unaffordable to most Portlanders. So I understand the confusion about that, the language, and I just wanted to clarify.
Commissioner, can I make one other point?
Sure.
In keeping with what you just said, there was a time when the Portland Development Commission and the then version of the Housing Bureau, which had a different name, had a big disagreement about what was affordable housing. And dollars were being spent differently depending on which of the two agencies were spending the dollars. When Mayor Adams came in as mayor, when I came in as housing commissioner, and we collapsed all the housing programs together and put them under one roof, and then redirected the mission of the Portland Housing Bureau, we resolved that question finally, unless the council wants to reopen it at some point. And we said our focus is low-income families and individuals. So it eliminated the conflict that was going on by reconciling funding, policy, and oversight under one bureau. It, at the time, was resisted by a lot of people and was controversial because PDC was using some public resources to create incentives for fancy hotels and other kinds of things. But it was the right thing to do, in my opinion. But it's also why the housing that we get presented on all the time fits within the guidelines that were established with that relaunch of the Portland Housing Bureau. It is just, however, rare that we meet our target on 0 to 30. That's been the unmet need, and there's a huge need out there that the housing authority, that Home Forward can't meet on its own. And so I'm delighted to see we're making some progress there.
Because even public housing needs rent revenue. They can't all be free, which is a challenge. And I also want to point out a couple other challenges that kind of complicate this conversation. Number one, the federal poverty income guidelines are woefully out of date. And so you have to be incredibly low income to qualify for supports that should be available to people that earn significantly more. And then the other issue I see is that we base our median family income on all residents, homeowners and renters. And we know that renters make significantly less money than homeowners. So renters are, I think, the unaffordability issue is somewhat, like the severity is somewhat hidden by the fact that we're assuming that people who are trying to rent make median family income. And we know that average rents are only affordable to people that earn 120% of median family income, and that makes matters even worse. Thank you for humoring me, but I think these are just important details to think about when we're talking about affordability.
Very good. Carla, do we have any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have one person signed up. Maggie?
Come on up.
I'm glad I'm hearing the word permanent supportive housing more. I think it's necessary. I think, I don't know what happened to the people in the 70 units in the West Wind, like, where did they go? Were they displaced? Did they go out on the street?
No,
Do
they will not be displaced onto the
Oh,
street.
okay, and the other thing I would like to say is, it's good to rehab buildings. Is there any way to add more units to the West Wind?
Possibly, yes.
And you're going to be putting people back in there, but that didn't increase the number of units. So how are we going about increasing the number of units for permanent supportive housing? And when I mean permanent supportive housing, I mean with social services, not just sticking someone in an apartment.
Maggie,
Right.
could I answer that question? Because this is a good question you've raised, and it's one that's certainly been asked. The West Wind is at the risk of being demolished and rebuilt as a private sector condominium or apartment project. So we are at risk of losing the 70 beds that currently exist there that are very low-income beds. But what we're proposing doing is replacing it with a building that will actually last for 100 years, unlike the building that is there currently. And it will also provide support services to ensure that the chronically homeless can be successful in their housing. So this is,
Okay,
this is
so
a play
then
for
my
the long
question
term.
would be, is there a way to increase the number of units in that building?
Potentially, yes,
Okay, try and do that. Okay,
definitely.
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. Any further testimony on this item? This is an emergency ordinance. Any further discussion, please call the roll.
Udaley?
I think I've made enough comments on this item. I'll just vote aye.
Fritz?
The $4 million that is coming from the county to the city for this project is from the sale of Wapato, and I am very happy to know that that money is going to be used for 100 units of deeply affordable housing, including 70 of permanent supportive housing. And that's a much better use for that money than putting people in a shelter that's not going to provide permanent housing. Aye.
Fish?
Well, thanks to Director Callahan and to Mark Jolan for their excellent presentation, and I'm very pleased to support this ordinance. Aye.
Hardesty?
I'm also very grateful for the information, and I hope we continue to question the term affordable housing because, again, we need to make sure that we're actually hitting the mark. I'm grateful for this proposal. I vote aye.
Wheeler?
I want to thank the Housing Bureau, and I want to thank my team for the hard work that they've put into this. This is a new beginning for SROs in the city of Portland. We are in the process of embarking on modern and relevant SRO communities that can address the chronically homeless situation that we've seen in our community. This is the first major play that we've made with regard to the affordable housing bond. It will be followed up, as Director Callahan had mentioned, in short order by the Joyce, and you'll see other projects like this too as we go about aggressively meeting our commitment to create 2,000 units of permanent supportive housing in our community. We made that commitment a year ago. It was a 10-year commitment. We're already about 650 units into that 2,000 unit commitment. And I hope that shows the resolve of this council as well as my own resolve on this issue. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Colleagues, I have to run. I'm turning the ordinance over to the council president.
Thank you, Mayor. Next item, please.
Item 1024, amend ordinance to revise the legal description for Southeast Washington Street.
Commissioner Udaley.
Thank you, Madam President. This ordinance is needed to clean up an error in the legal description from a previous street vacation ordinance vacating a portion of Southeast Washington Street west of Southeast 30th Avenue. The amended ordinance will eliminate a 5-foot gap between two street vacation ordinances, one from 1988 and the other from 2008. I do wish street vacation was something more fun than what it really is, because I could use a vacation right now. Now, here to provide details and answer any questions is PBOT right-of-way agent Dee Walker. Welcome, Dee.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. Commissioner Udaley pretty much said everything. But basically, this is just a correction. In 1988, we vacated Southeast Washington Street, and in 2008, we were to vacate the remaining portion of Southeast Washington Street. Unfortunately, there was an error, and it included a 5-foot gap, so we have 5 feet of public right-of-way within the midst of all this private property. The abutting property owner is in for redevelopment, and it came to their attention that this was not their property, and then we found out that there was an error in the legal description, hence my amending the ordinance. So this is more of a kind of a cleanup, Peabody-initiated housekeeping issue to correct that 2008 ordinance.
Thank you. Questions?
Is anyone opposed to this action?
No.
No. Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Did anybody sign up to testify, Carla?
They left.
Okay. This is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Thank you, Dee. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Sorry.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Fritz?
Odd when the order of voting changes in the middle of the meeting. Well done, Carla. Aye.
Thank you.
Next item, please. Last item.
Item 1025, authorize the Bureau of Transportation to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Southwest Capitol Highway, Southwest Taylor's Ferry Road to Southwest Garden Home Road project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Commissioner Udaly.
Thank you, Madam President. This ordinance will authorize the Bureau of Transportation to offer just compensation for small segments of properties that will allow us to move forward on the sidewalk, bike lane, paving, stormwater, and water system improvements on Southwest Capitol Highway between Southwest Garden Home and Southwest Taylor's Ferry Road. Here to provide details and answer any questions is PBOT right-of-way agent Marty Maloney. Welcome, Marty.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Marty Maloney with PBOT Right-of-Way. The agenda in front of you.
Could you bring the mic just a little bit closer?
Oh, sorry. The agenda in front of you authorizes the city to use eminent domain authority as well as the ability to offer just compensation for the needed property rights associated with the Capitol Highway project. All affected property owners have been informed of the city's need for those certain property rights, and were invited to attend the reading of this council item as well. It's pretty much all. I'd be happy to answer any questions council might have.
I have a question. I understand that 10 of these may involve some permanent easements. Could you tell us about those, please?
Correct. Yeah, so there'll be some permanent right-of-way that's necessary due to some grading out there. Requires some retaining walls to be constructed. On 4 of the properties, we don't have enough right-of-way at this time to actually put in the retaining walls within that existing right-of-way. So we need to acquire a couple feet off the frontage of a property. Then also for the rest of the 6 are for permanent retaining wall maintenance easements. So we're actually going to be putting the retaining walls within the existing right-of-way, but down the road to inspect the retaining walls, we'll need to get onto certain properties to do so, and then if necessary to maintain or do any fixes. So.
And for the 4 that are actually having property taken, are they all hyper aware that this is going to happen?
Correct. Yeah.
And have you spoken with each one of them?
I haven't spoke to all of them, but I have sent out mailings to everybody. I've spoke to, I believe, 2 out of the 4. Of the properties, but we'll also be doing contract appraisal work on those, so the appraiser will be in contact with them pretty soon here, but I can definitely reach out to them again and make sure that they are aware of that.
Yeah, I would actually like that to happen before we vote on the ordinance.
Okay.
Because construction easements come and go, and also the maintenance easements, but for the ones where their property is actually going to to be used permanently for right-of-way, it seems like that I would really like to know. Usually you come and you've already spoken to everybody and they're okay with it.
Yeah, a lot of the time, sometimes it's tough to get a hold of people. It's just more of sending out the information about the project and saying, this is something that's coming up, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, definitely I can try to reach out to them again. And,
yeah, to meet the government taking somebody's property with them really having no ability to say that's not fair. That's one of the most significant things we do. Commissioner, would you be okay bringing this back next week?
Marty, this is an emergency ordinance, so can you tell me what the level of urgency is?
So level of urgency is basically construction windows for this coming May is when they want to start construction on the project, but we don't have a ton of time to actually acquire the needed property rights. We have 80 property owners we're dealing with, and that's why I wanted to run an emergency, just because it would take that extra month if we didn't run an emergency.
And so just to be clear, everyone has been notified.
Correct.
The question is
Just
whether
if-
there was clarity on permanent easements.
Yeah, and I guess the opinion on the acquisition.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I can definitely reach out and and ask them about it, that's, yeah, no problem.
So what would we do? Continue this to next week and keep it an emergency?
Let's just keep going, and I have another suggestion. Commissioner Hardesty?
Thank you, Madam President. I share Commissioner Fritz's concern. So I'm trying to understand. So there are 200 specific pieces of property. There are 80 property owners. And how many properties will permanently be taken through eminent domain?
So all properties are under the threat of eminent domain because the city has the ability to condemn on these property rights. We have a great track record of not actually condemning on properties. Since I've even been here, I've been here for about 12 years, we've never had to acquire property rights through a jury trial. We do a good job of trying to negotiate with property owners and coming to a mutual beneficial outcome. So, and it's not actually 200 200 easements. Those are legal descriptions and exhibits. So there's about 100 separate easement rights that we're going to be acquiring over 80 people's properties.
And what's the,
Thank you. My next question really has to do with what are you, when you say notification, what does that mean?
So we send out general information for the actual projects itself, saying that.
No, I'm sorry. How is the information sent out? Is it a letter? Is it a certified? Is it an email? Just what's the process?
Certified mailing.
Certified mailing.
Yeah, definitely. It's part of the, we actually have to send out certified. We have to know that the property owners are receiving this mailing. So it is sent out certified. I do talk to a lot of property owners. Once I send this out, I give them all my contact information. And so then I can kind of start the process of, this is what we have going on, and this is the property rights we need. It's just sometimes it's hard to get hold of everybody. It's just, just kind of nature of the beast.
And my last question is, during your negotiation with the property owner, have you had an experience where the ask was significantly more than you thought the value was? And where does that additional money come from when you are making this trade?
So basically, we're not infallible when it comes to offering, to valuing properties, but we ask the property owners to provide information that would base this extra, if we are offering 1,000, if they say 2,000, I always ask them, why is this? Sometimes they just say, because I've dealt with development services and they charged me a bunch of money, so I want this. We can't do that, but if there is certain, I think your property value that you put on this is low, we'll definitely look at this. And if there is a compensation, we go above and beyond, it has to be approved through the project manager and the budget of the overall project.
Thank you.
Commissioner Udeni?
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to make it clear that all affected property owners have been contacted and informed as to the city's need for these property rights by certified mail. We're not trying to pull anything over on anyone.
None whatsoever.
This is a project broadly supported in Southwest Portland?
Yeah, the people that I've talked to, I know people understand there's going to be inconvenience involved when the construction of this project is going on, but the people that I've spoken to agree with the project, and I know it's been in the process for over a decade now that they've tried to do this, and a lot of people have told me that, we've been here since you first started talking about this, but they have been agreeable to the project. It's just the inconvenience during construction might be a little rough, but.
And these are very narrow strips at the property edge?
Absolutely.
Property line?
Absolutely.
Will any buildings be impacted?
Nope.
Do you anticipate this will decrease the value of anyone's property?
No, you can almost make an argument that it would increase values.
'Cause they're getting sidewalks,
But we don't really
yeah.
take that in consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the effect on people's property would be taken in consideration if there was any sort of damage in the appraisals that we complete, and we would compensate for that.
So out of all the impacted properties, I think the term eminent domain is a little bit of a trigger for a lot of people, but no one's home is being taken away, no one's property value is being decreased. We're making vital improvements to the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure in an area that is inadequately served. So I'm not going to argue with my colleagues if they'd like to hold this over for a week while we do a little bit more homework, but I would prefer to move forward
So, Madam
with it.
President, I'm loath to impose a new
Excuse me,
requirement.
I'd like a turn to just, let's all my colleagues have a turn first, Commissioner. I had a follow-up question about the certified mail. Is it required, a signature required in receipt?
Correct, yeah, they
Okay.
have the green cards, and they sign off, they send them back, and we just add them into the files.
And of the, you've talked to two of the four who have permanent purchase of their, part of their property. So presumably they are okay because otherwise they'd be here or sent in a remonstrance.
Yeah, definitely.
Of the other two, could you give us, as Commissioner Udaly just alluded to, are they narrow strips?
Correct.
Do they have any structures on those strips?
I believe it's 2 feet is the largest of an actual property acquisition we're completing, and really we're going to be putting just the retaining wall onto that property. There's some landscaping involved, but it's not any sort of dwelling. We're not hitting any buildings or anything
Trees?
to that effect. Yes, there'll be some trees. I'd have to look back, and I can clarify a little bit more on those 4 properties. I know there is some landscaping. I'm not sure how many trees are involved in that area, but a lot of the trees that will be removed are within the existing right-of-way in a lot of spaces, just because we're have to recapture that area that's kind of been overgrown already.
I know we did have testimony at one of the hearings from the property owner at the corner of Alice and Capitol Highway concerned about impact to their landscaping. I'm just wondering, I'll yield to you in a second, Commissioner Fish. Tomorrow afternoon, we have the Native American declaring Native American Heritage Month. I believe that we're no longer going to have the report. So would it be possible for you to try to contact the other 2 property owners this afternoon or tonight? And then we could bring it back tomorrow afternoon after the Native American event. Would that be acceptable to my colleagues? Commissioner Fisher, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, that would be acceptable to me. I just want to say that, as you and I know, Commissioner Fritz, over the last 10 years of service, these things are heavily prescribed by law and code. I am loath to set new conditions on staff about leaving phone messages, calling, contacting people, and other things. If the council wants to take that up as part of creating a new level of engagement around someone who's getting notice, I think we should do it in the ordinary course. But I frankly don't find it very compelling to have someone leave another message saying, did you get the letter that you signed for and have you complained? Outside of our current system, because our system is heavily regulated and heavily prescribed.
Right, and for the last 11 years, I've been asking these questions of every single project that comes, whether it's a sewer or a road or whatever it is.
Definitely.
Because I believe that government forcing people to sell their property is a really significant thing, so
And
if you would...
I apologize. A lot of the time when I do speak to property owners about are they in favor of the project, a lot of the times I can't completely answer that because their question is, how much money are you going to give me for this property? And
Right.
I can't.
I
like,
understand that. I just
yeah,
want to
that's-
make sure
but-
that they know that there's an opportunity they could come tomorrow afternoon or send in information if they are vehemently opposed and want us to look at re-engineering. I don't think, this has never happened in all the times I've been asking for this to happen, and you've been really great about anticipating that I will be asking this. So if we wouldn't mind setting it over until after the item 1028 tomorrow, and then we can vote on it at that time if there's no further input. Does that sound acceptable?
Sure.
Thank you very much. So that's so ordered, and we are adjourned until 2 o'clock this afternoon.